Hey guys,
Hello.
Hey,
thanks guys for tuning in to another stream of the Resurgence of Sanity. Oh, we'll have an interesting one tonight about natural law and father custody. Why? What is natural law, how it applies, and why is adamant, extremely important that there ought to be ought to be father custody for the children based on natural law. So, what is the current situation with fathers, children in society, guys?
what situation? I mean, the guys are just separated from the kids, and that's it.
Well, approximately 50% of the population has reproductive rights. The other 50% are slaves at the will of those with the reproductive rights.
Yeah, pretty much.
In other
I thought,
words,
so don't we? We don't have debtors' prisons, though, do we?
oh, yes. See, a woman is not responsible if she falls pregnant. She can elect to kill the child or give birth. The man has no rights over his progeny, pre birth or post birth, because if she elects to have the child, he's on the hook through the courts for child support. If he marries her, and now theoretically they're both in charge, but no, not really. If she decides to divorce, he's automatically awarded custody of the kids and he has to pay. He has
Pretty much most
no
of the time.
No, well, yeah, okay. Most of the time,
95% of the time, or something like that.
no, it's like 85% of the time
Okay.
women are awarded custody. Of the 15% that men get custody, half of that time the woman didn't show up for court.
Oh,
So when it's a contentious battle, a man only gets custody maybe 7% of the time, and she's probably a blatant meth user and been in prison. She has to be absolutely horrendous to lose custody. So essentially, men have no reproductive rights and no custody rights, and women hold all the cards and are awarded children and benefits pre, post birth. Men have nothing. With with a few exceptions.
Well,
and
and
so
those exceptions are when the court grants them.
At the whim of the court, yes.
okay. So basically, we have an epidemic of single mothers and generations of children raised without fathers. What is the result of that been?
Yeah, go back and watch our stream from Monday. Inertia. Fatherless children don't learn from the father discipline and hard work. And they lack the ability to understand the meaning of work. And now work is just so horrendous. Oh my God, I have to work 25 hours a week and I have to go to work 5 days a week. I'm just burnt out.
Well, there's another aspect that we've talked about before too, and that's the rising incarceration rates and criminality rates of particularly young men.
Yeah.
Women create criminals. Men create productive members of society. Women create criminals. That is the stats. You guys have seen them here on this channel. I'm not going to bring them up now because we don't have time to go into it. You've seen them on other channels. Women create little criminals.
Because it's entitlement mentality
Then up at the end.
and lack of
Nothing
just
then up at the end.
Okay. But yeah, it's entitlement mentality. Look at the type of criminality. It's not high crimes, like murder or it's petty larceny. Well, I want this, so I should just be able to take it. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to
Okay.
go there.
No. So I'll add my notes here to the thing. So we talked about the current situation. Well, the problem condensed is a rejection of fathers not having custody that causes much of the societal problem of disintegration, which ultimately is a rejection of natural law. So what I'm basically arguing is, since the problem of society is so multifaceted and the tyrannical government, which usurps the authority of parents, especially the father, they're not going to submit to a mere theological treatise on law. They don't care. They'll kick you to the curb. They don't want to have the time to listen. They don't care. However, we at least want to give you an understanding of what is true of your natural rights from natural law and divine law and what you are facing and some practical advice towards the end. So let's get started. We see natural law. Franciscus Junius was a reformer. He spoke on natural law. I got a book here by him. I'll pull it up. There you go. The Mosaic Polity. There you go. Franciscus Junius. There you go. He says natural law is that which is innate to creatures endowed with reason and informs them with common notions of nature. That is, with principles and conclusions adumbrating the eternal law by a certain participation. Oh, I think Girolamo Zanchi, another good guy, he's got a book on the law in general. He kind of gives a better breakdown, I think. He says every law has its origin in God. The just laws by which every kingdom, province, home, and community is governed come necessarily from God. And then he says natural law applies to all people. In fact, it is inscribed on every heart by God himself almost from birth. Divine laws look specifically to the church within which God has entrusted his word. Human laws apply to the remaining peoples who derive their own ordinances from natural law for their own reasons. God's church also observes natural law alongside God's law and even human laws, at least those that God wants it to follow. And notice this little phrase here. Since God sometimes orders, sometimes allows us not to obey our magistrates' wicked laws and customs. Okay, so that's natural law. He also says this is actually his thesis here of natural law. Natural law is the will of God and consequently the divine rule and principle for knowing what to do and what not to do. It is namely the knowledge of God. It is namely the knowledge of what is good or bad, fair or unfair, upright or shameful, that was inscribed upon the hearts of all people by God himself, also after the fall. For this reason, we are all universally taught what activities should be pursued and what should be avoided. That is, to do one thing and to avoid another. And we know that we are obligated and pushed to act for the glory of God, our own good, and the welfare of our neighbor, in both in private and in public. In addition, we know that if we do what should be avoided or avoid what we should do, we are condemned. But if we do the opposite, we are defended and absolved.
Well,
Nick.
Go ahead, Steve.
Nick, if natural law is inscribed or written on our hearts, isn't it a feeling? And if it's a feeling and a woman just believes that she's better equipped to raise the children and she should have custody, how is that against natural law?
Well, natural law is inscribed on who inscribes it is God himself despite the fall, yet it's not full in every one. There's different degrees to which they grasp the light of nature or the natural law. And so sometimes in certain societies that really you could say, are pretty degenerate in morals. God gives them over to a debased mind, and so they don't have much respect for the natural law or nature. God gives them over. And so the light of the natural law is not as complete in that society or person.
So,
In
Okay.
fact, they'll describe that later on here today.
well, the other thing I'm seeing here is that natural law describes things that we know we should do and that we should not do, right?
Yes.
And we were
Yeah.
talking earlier about women create criminals.
Mhm.
Okay. And I assume that we're going to get into this later about why that is, or that,
Yes.
why women can't create functional human beings on their own. Because what you're saying here about the natural law not being full means that there's an aspect that you're born with, but there's also an aspect that has to be instilled, right?
Yes. And there's also, remember, it is God, according to theology of natural law, it is God himself who inscribes the natural law in his heart. Some might use the term common grace for this, others might not. But that doesn't mean he has to inscribe it on the heart as much as another.
Right.
He's not obligated to do so, but he does to some extent in everyone.
Well, I mean, even the criminals know what they're doing is wrong. They just don't care.
All right.
Well, okay, I want to make a point here. We're talking father custody. You're basing it on natural
Yes.
law.
Yes.
Pretty much a lot of people just say, I don't care about natural law. What does the Bible say? Okay.
Well, natural
The
law is
Bible,
actually reflected in the 10 Commandments. We'll get to that.
okay, yeah. But father custody at the very beginning was in the beginning. Adam,
Mhm.
man was created with dominion. Woman was created from man to be a helpmate. So,
Right.
dominion. Adam named the animals. He had dominion. Eve was under him. So, we have a
Yes.
hierarchy. And therefore, since he has dominion, women were never given dominion. A mother was never given dominion. Custody
No.
is dominion. So,
No, they were not given custody.
when a woman is given custody, she's given dominion. This is anti-Christian, anti-biblical, anti-natural law. It's against
Yes.
the order that God created. And
If you're
yes,
against order,
natural
what
law
happens?
affirms this.
And what happens when you go against order? Go against nature.
Ooh, bad things happen. I mean, you
Chaos,
don't get a good
disorder.
result.
No. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
basic principle. You reject order, you get disorder. You get problems.
Well, what you're really saying here is that physics is, for lack of a better term, the controller here. If you want to go one way, you are explicitly choosing not to go another. If you are choosing disorder, you are choosing not order. You can't have one if you choose the other.
Mhm. You can't have both. You can only have order. If you choose disorder, you will only get disorder. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah.
You there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
I agree. Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
Nick, you having speaker issues?
I think my internet's crap in this room.
Oh, okay.
I think I got the wrong room.
We'll
Okay, I'm
soldier
trying
on.
to find my notes. I'm trying to find my notes here so I can well, can you remove the banner at the bottom? I'm having a hard time reading my notes. Is there a way to do that?
The law, natural law in the light of nature.
No,
Yeah,
the
well, see, we have
scrolling
the
back.
banner going across the bottom.
I can
It's
take
kind of
that
blocking
off.
my screen. Yeah, thanks.
There we go.
There we go. So we'll move on to natural law and the light of nature. Sometimes these are kind of combined, but there's a subtle distinction. This one quote says, "The law of nature is comprehensively known to God alone." See, that's the distinction. To whom the whole number and forms of relations between himself and men are naked and open. It is stable, permanent, uniform, and everywhere binding. The light of nature is that knowledge of the nature of God and of themselves, and of the duties resulting from the connections between them which men actually possess. It is exceedingly diversified in its extent and degree, according to the different capacities, opportunities, and inclinations of men. So that's John Brown of Haddington. I think he's a Scottish Presbyterian. This is systematic theology, a compendious view of natural and revealed religion of the, I think he's from the 18th century, if not mistaken. So there's that distinction between natural law and the light of nature. So natural law is it in its totality as known to God, and light of nature is man's capacity, I guess you could say, to comprehend natural law, or his capacity in comprehending or incapacity. Samuel Rutherford, he says of what is warranted by the direction of nature's light is warranted by the law of nature, and consequently by a divine law, for you can deny the law of nature to be a divine law. It's basically saying God is the creator. If you find something that is a natural law, it is a law given by God.
So does this mean that natural law is kind of a human understanding, and it must be arrived at through reason and understanding what's written on our hearts, what's
Yeah.
the nature of God, what's in the Bible? It's kind of a bringing down all these things to this is how we should live. And you have to arrive at it through knowledge and reason, not through intuition and feelings.
Which is another reason why women create criminals. Women don't arrive at conclusions through rational thought, reason. I mean, they read the Bible, but they read the Bible as basically a how can I get away with doing what I want to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, also, you have to ask so the natural law and divine law are not opposed. So, like the divine law, as expressly given in the Word of God, actually is the clearest law of God, because it's this expressed interpretation into a fallen and broken world. But they're not contrary to another. Natural law and divine law are not contrary. They're both of God. But there's classical. So what are some examples of natural law? Well, John Knox was a famous Scottish Presbyterian. He wrote an infamous book that Calvin somewhat critiqued, The First Blast of the Trumpet Against the Monstrous Regimen of Women. He says of women in
What a great
authority,
title.
yay. Oh, yeah. I love it. Yeah, he says, yea, they should further pronounce where women reign or be in authority, there must needs vanity to be preferred to virtue, ambition and pride to temperance and modesty, and finally the avarice of the mother of all mischief must needs devour equity and justice. Isn't that kind of what happened with feminist rule and father custody? Interesting. Also, he says of Aristotle, he possibly speaks of Aristotle, saying, in Aristotle, as before is touched, doth plainly affirm that wheresoever women bear dominion, there must needs the people be disordered. I can't read that. Living and abounding in all intemperancy, something, pride, excessiveness, and vanity.
Going to pride.
Probably translates as given to pride, which is true.
Okay. Well, I got the shadow box over it, so I have a hard time reading some things at the bottom. And finally, in the end, that they must needs come to confusion and ruin. Additionally,
Okay.
but to me, it is sufficient. Okay. What do you want to say, Steve?
You finish. I'll make my point after.
All right. Because now he's talking directly about nature. But to me, it is sufficient because this part of nature is not my most sure foundation to have proved that men illuminated only by the light of nature have seen and have determined that it is a thing most repugnant to nature that women rule and govern over men. So the light of nature is not his most sure foundation, but rather the word of God, but he can still argue that point sufficiently.
So my observation is, and it's most clearly seen in divorce, and in my divorces, many other divorces of men. Okay, there are exceptions, but men seek to do something constructive, to save their marriage, to find a means of accommodating each other and making it work. Or, okay, we're going to divorce. Okay, let's cooperate so we don't have to piss away a whole bunch of money and make it as best as it can for me and for you, because there's more to divide up. Constructive in the face of whatever circumstances. Women, on the other hand, are in general seeking destruction. They tend to destroy when they have power. Men tend to construct when they have power.
Because it's contrary to their nature in general. I mean, you might have a Queen Bess year or you'll have a rare exception, but on the whole, no, they tend to destroy. That's not their nature. Plutarch, what were you going to say?
Well, it reminds me of a popular feminist saying that you hear all the time, and I even hear it out of hyper-conservative families, and that is, well, women civilize the men. Women caused men to want to build civilization. Wrong. Flat wrong. No. Men civilized the world in an attempt to civilize the women.
Yeah. What about these? So, like, they're, housewifery used to be pretty tedious.
Yeah.
And who came up with all these inventions to, help alleviate those problems and
men
further
down the line?
Yes.
It's all men.
Yep.
Vacuum cleaner, dishwasher, clothes
Nope.
washer.
Hold on.
What?
Dishwasher was invented by a woman.
Okay.
All the others, okay, that's the only one.
I mean, okay, the Roomba was invented by a dude. She doesn't have to drive the vacuum cleaner anymore. That was invented by a dude.
Oh man. And also, so we can also see examples of natural law, light of nature, not just, in female rulers in the hierarchy, but also it is in the hierarchy, but also can go to hair coverings and the rejection of proper hair length. So John Calvin, Googe, Thomas Gattaker. So Googe and Gattaker were on the Westminster Assembly. They show in their writings, their works, they show the rejection of a proper hierarchy, that of natural order is an abomination, a monster of nature. Especially Calvin speaks of the monstrous or abominable nature of rejecting the hair covering or having short hair for women and long hair for men. So you can see our prior episodes on the resurgence of sanity on effeminacy and hair length. So the law of nature is quite broad. It covers nature. But nature is ordered.
That the same? Is that the same Googe who wrote on domestical duties?
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Same one.
He that's a pretty thick book on men and women relations and how things should be ordered and what men can do to women, what women can do to men, how they each, their duties towards each other. And it was pretty reasonable. It wasn't all pro men. He advocated for a lot of things in there that to keep. Remember, he's a good man. He wants to keep women safe, and he wants to provide a rule of how things happen. Because you know what? In his day and age, there were probably a lot of domestic issues, just like we have
speaks
today.
about them.
And he wanted to bring order to that, not subdue women. He wanted, okay, here's how we know the man is wrong. Here's how we know the woman is wrong. This is the rule.
Well, Steve, this is a fascinating point, because if you play this forward in the modern day, the order is what allows women to be safe. And we've seen a breakdown in the modern order. And now you get all these TikToks of videos of girls getting assaulted. I saw one on Twitter. A sub-Saharan was going after a girl with the intent to force himself on her. This is that inherent disorder that the women, they voted for this, and that's why we keep saying, in the conservative space, guys, this is what you voted for. This is the disorder you wanted. And what you're saying is Googe he said, here's the order for men, here's the order for women. He ordered it so that they would have better lives. Your life is always better ordered than disordered, always.
And is more pleasing to God.
And
because he created the order.
And you cannot create order sufficient to make women feel safe. Because the safer it gets, the more wacky shit they're going to be scared of. And the safer it gets for them not to need men, the more they're going to fear men. There was kind of a happy balance there where there's a scary outside world here, but you're safe with me. So they'd trust their men, and they'd see men as the protectors against the bad men. So there'd be a good man here, bad men over there. And so they had some allegiance. Now, since they don't need or don't think they need a man, therefore all men have gone into the bad man category.
The bear.
Oh, we'll get to that. Feminism just destroys everything. Dabney was right. We'll talk about that. Now, what else are we talking about? The law of nature, guys. Reason, law of nature, some other things that we can talk about. Franciscus Junius, he says, who shares in the species with other human beings will share with other human beings in right reason the common law of nature and human law. For just as neither a Jew nor a Christian ceases to be a human by virtue of the fact that he is a Christian or a Jew, so also, or is a Jew or Christian, so also by virtue of this faith, he does not cease to be bound by the common and human law. On the contrary, one who makes further progress in God ought to be more scrupulously, what does it say there at the bottom?
Conform to the common and the human law.
Law, right. So that being a Christian neither assaults the natural reason and human order, nor is it a scandal and offense to Christian liberty, which has been given for edification, just as it is entirely and naturally commanded by right reason itself. Wow. So grace does not replace nature. Grace restores nature. So being a Christian does not negate your natural affections, natural responsibilities, does not negate natural law. It does not override nature.
Nick, just as a note, you might want to do a little bit of definition on what right reason is, because that's a phrase that the audience might not be familiar with.
Oh, so right reason, you could say, is proper reason, so logically correct reason, or right reason. So reason itself is morally good, is another way you could also say that.
Okay, so what we're kind of getting at here is that there is such thing as bad reason or wrong reason in this.
And that's morally wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point is that reason can be used in the service of both bad and good.
Yes.
I mean, the petty criminal has a reason for doing what they're doing. Doesn't make it a good one, but they have a reason for it.
Well, another aspect is right reason. That's old. That's the old meaning. It's not commonly used. Just right. It is right and just. So it's just reason. So it's infusing reason with justice.
So reason itself is not amoral.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
Sorry. Go ahead.
So truth itself is a moral good.
Didn't we do an entire
And to use
episode on this?
yes, and to use truth rightly is also another aspect of a moral good.
Go watch our prior
Yeah, we did do
video
an
on
episode.
that.
Is the
Hey,
red
any
pill amoral? Yeah.
Yep.
truth is morally good. And if red pill knowledge and understanding is true, it therefore must be morally good. Now, you can argue that these guys have it wrong. Well, are you living in the land of what is or the land of should be? Oh, this is the way it should be. Okay. Fine.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead. This is the way it is.
Well, and to piggyback on that, this podcast is not an episode about what is. I think we've been pretty clear on that. This is a podcast about how things natural law should be approached by.
Well,
men.
this time, but natural law exists and is. You can't
Correct.
change natural law by what natural law should be. Now, currently, we don't abide by natural law in our society.
Right.
And we're saying you should. So this is with justice in mind. This is how things should be. This is not how they are. We are out of conformance with God in divine law and natural law, and we are headed towards chaos and disorder.
Yes.
Since we are not following proper order, right and just order.
Plutarch, you want to read that page 78 quote?
Sure. Therefore, the uprightness of nature, according to someone's natural reason, must be lived out with the utmost diligence. Kind of what we were talking about. Then he speaks to hair length of 1 Corinthians 11 and concludes saying, nature itself is not only a most certain mistress of equitable good, equity, but even of uprightness, and likewise of order. From this principle, it is rightly concluded that in the rationale of good and upright, we ought to be imitators of nature.
No, isn't that what you're basically just saying, Steve?
I guess I'm being backed up here.
So guys, yes, this is a should episode, but we're only should because we're not following that right now, not because this is wrong or like it's this always is, this is, and we're just rebelling against it, for to use one of Steve's terms.
Yeah.
There's the truth, and what do you do with the truth? You can rebel against the truth, or you can embrace the truth. You can submit to what is right, or you can submit to what is wrong. Like, you can even use the truth in a wrong manner, like some of the RP stuff. Well, we see women in the fallen state, they tend to do this with their nature. Their nature's twisted, and they want to desire this. So therefore, you can, if you want to, to maximize your sexual, experience, do this and this and this. Like, well, it doesn't mean you have to do that, but hey, if you should file that away about how women act. But also, if you marry a woman, you also know how you can use that in God's proper context for the good of your
Nick?
marriage.
Are you saying that if I encounter a 304 with a high body count, I can't just have my way and add 1 to her body count and say, oh, it didn't hurt her at all because she was already that way?
No, that's a blindness to the law of nature. God has given them over. He has not enlightened them as much as the rest of the world. In fact, he's given them over to a debased mind in that respect. Yes.
Isn't there a Bible verse, something that says you cannot do evil that good may come of it?
Yeah, God forbid. I think it's Romans 6, if
And
I'm not mistaken. Yep.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of well, I just want to do it, and it's really not going to cause any harm. So I'm going to rationalize and say, hey, this is okay for me. This is going to be my truth. This is going to be my natural law.
Well, and we will get into this more later. This topic actually comes up in the streams that I'm planning. But just because something doesn't necessarily affect you does not mean that it does not have an effect on the world you inhabit. And I think this is particularly where women really struggle, and why they're always okay with saying, well, we deserve to have alimony, we deserve to have child support, we deserve. Okay, those things have an impact. It might not be a negative impact on you, but it's very definitely a negative impact on somebody.
Yeah. I also want to harken back to 1 Corinthians 11. He's talking about order in nature. In 1 Corinthians 11, there's Steve, what's the order?
What? God, man, woman? Because God
Yeah.
comes first. Man is the glory of God. Women are the glory of man. That's why a man must worship with his head uncovered, and a woman must worship with her head covered. Am I getting to what
Yeah.
you
Yes.
what you
Yes.
were getting at?
Yeah. So there's a structure, there's an order that is reflected in nature, especially with hair length as well. Women having long hair, men having short hair.
And it even goes to how we should conduct ourselves in life, how we should dress. And, it's just
Yes.
evident in, okay, women used to wear veils or over their hair going to church. It was just expected, common. Everybody did it. You understood that hierarchy. It was there every Sunday,
Yes.
and it was ordained by God. It was not something that man invented. Now, it was
No.
St. Paul that wrote it down, which became part of the Bible. But I think we should assume that he didn't just invent this. This was already a practice when he wrote
Yeah,
it
it was an
down. And he
ordinance
was
of the
reminding
church,
people.
of the
Am I
churches.
right, Nick?
Yeah. It was an
They were
ordinance not just
already
of
doing
one
it.
church, but of churches. So you can't just appeal to the culture of Corinth. Paul appeals to nature, he appeals to creation, and then he appeals to not just Corinth, but multiple churches, the custom of or the ordinance of the churches. So yeah, he didn't make it, he didn't just pull it out of his ass. No. And what was the big problem in Corinth? Sexual immorality, disorder, usurpation over men by the women speaking in the church, women not having proper decorum of the hierarchy. Huh. And he says God is not a God of disorder, right? He's not a God of confusion. And he
Right.
establishes order. And anyways, we move on to Zanke. He said he gives an important qualification. I've talked about this already, saying natural law has not been written in every person's heart equally, but more in some and less in others. All people know that good and proper behavior should be maintained. My comment is this is certainly an important qualification. It shows why certain persons and groups do not follow what is natural law, but do so in other areas, as a natural law has not been written in every person's heart the same. This principle is exemplified and especially important to us regarding men's and women's hair length. So I quoted this in a previous episode. This quote, he says, "Still, for a man to grow out his hair, for a woman to cut it, though it is not shameful for the Persians, for many other peoples, the Greeks most of all it is. Therefore, the apostle in 1 Corinthians 11, verses 14 and 15 calls this natural law. Also, it is clear that this law has been implanted and instilled more effectively in some and less effectively in others because many people still disdain it, even though they know it." Well, we can see that with Skittles people. We can see that with Transformers, the Troons. Yeah, they don't like nature. And so they rebel against nature, even though they kind of still know it. And in fact, doctors have to still know that to properly diagnose them.
So you can't escape the nature, huh?
Right, you can't. So also, John Brown of Haddington says, God is neither doth nor is obligated to make it perfectly and clearly known to mankind in their present state. That's God's law of nature. Now, what does this have to do? We've talked a little bit about this. What does this have to do with the primacy of the father and family against others? Well, we say there's
That's
an
a
order.
good question. Oh, enlighten us, Nick.
All right. Well, God created, as Steve said earlier, a hierarchy. Father, wife, father and children. The father's the head of the household, and the wife submits to the husband, who is the father, the head of the household. That's creation. That's reflected elsewhere. We'll get to that, but I'll give you a few quotes. So I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. It's a traditional thing inscribed in the history of the world, reflecting a natural law. So parents originally were the sole governors under God of their children, mediate or immediate. This is the only form of government which is merely natural. Each family therefore became a small sovereignty or state by itself in which parents were governors. That's Brown again. Oh, Dabney on Fire. He talks about parental love. This is Robert Louis Dabney. Parental love is the main bond of human society among creatures otherwise selfish and unjust as fallen men are. Without it, society would doubtless degenerate into anarchy and men into savages.
Oh, I have so much to say on this. Oh,
yeah. Uh-huh.
Well,
He did
because
too.
well, so one of the things that's endemic to our age is that, and we've talked about this before on this channel, is that the boomers are not helping their children out. And I would submit that they are doing that out of a selfish desire. I saw a great meme on Twitter. It was a criminal and somebody else walks into a bar. The boomer tunes and shoots his kid in the face twice. Right? Like that's how they're I mean, and this will probably actually come up on Monday because this is where I'm planning on going with it on Monday. But it's this exact problem. We have, by imposing the state in between the parents and children's, we have destroyed those bonds. And now even families where the state is not directly imposed, we have told the parents that, well, it's okay. Just do yourself. Take care of you. Your kids, they'll take care of themselves. They should want to take care of themselves.
I just thought of something.
It's like without natural affection. Sorry.
This Dominion and the boomers not really assisting their kids. Father boomers. Let's just say that is the duty of a father. Okay, if a man does not understand and embrace and use his dominion in his life and understand that even after his children are gone, he's still the patriarch.
Yes.
He still has some dominion. If he doesn't embrace that dominion, he doesn't see his ongoing responsibility to assist his children and pass on his wealth because he's a steward to the family wealth. He has dominion over it. It doesn't belong to him. It passes down. So is this lack of proper behavior by boomers to pass things down? Is that a lack of men understanding their dominion?
Ding, ding, ding. Chalk one up for Steve.
Oh yeah, William. Yeah, he talks about that in this book. Yeah, William Good talks about the importance of providing for your children, wills, estate, inheritance, stuff like that,
You mean that helping your
and raising
children
up
is
with proper
Christian?
occupation. Yes.
Oh, I know some boomers are going to have some trouble with that.
It doesn't mean like it means that the fathers, especially mothers, can't do this so much. They can raise them up in Christian religion morality, but fathers especially have a duty to see to that their daughters are well seen to by a proper husband and guard the chastity and purity. Also, fathers, especially in raising sons, to have a proper occupation in which they could provide for a family.
Yes.
But also knowing that they're young and they're going to go through struggles often early in marriage. And it's also sometimes it involved providing a family home. It also didn't mean it had to, but certain things, and also providing for his children once he left this world, so that they would not necessarily be over encumbered in debts and other things, but also have a good heritage.
Shoe, yes.
Yes.
Sure it is. Shoe is right.
But
and Shoe,
what's
if you want your shoes, you got to email me so I can get your address.
Steve's going to
If
pick
you
on
don't
you
want
all
them,
night about
don't
that.
email me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Red truck. I got a red truck from my dad. So my dad actually did a good job. I can say this, he's a boomer, but my dad did a good job raising me up to be not perfect, but he made sure I got an education. He made sure I had a job after college. He said, "Go here." Kind of gave me the kick. He said, "You need to put to work, learn this skill." So I had something to actually fall back on once after I went through seminary and the divorce and ministry was ruined. I actually had something to fall back on.
Well, and I do want to make a point.
And he
here.
gave me a red truck he gave me a red truck in high school, so that was pretty nice.
I do want to make a point here. We are speaking in generalities when we speak about the boomers.
Yeah.
Not all of them are this way. My dad certainly has not been as well, and he did a fantastic job, I think, raising us. But we are speaking about, in this case, the majority. And the majority or the minority is never going to influence society. So when you see society making mistakes like this, we are speaking about the majority of boomer parents have turned selfishly into themselves because no worries, the state will take care of my children for me. They've been told that since they were born. And
that's the problem. The state should not be involved at all.
Right, but and the majority bought into it and believed it. Not all of them. As I said, I was homeschooled. I've said that before on this stream. But the majority.
So I am a tail end boomer. So my father, he was born in 1937. Definitely not a boomer. But, I just gained some understanding of him and how he treated me. I needed help a couple times, and my first divorce. And, it was more emotional and advisory, even growing up. I didn't have that. He worked hard. He didn't have this understanding of dominion. He was a Christian man, but he didn't really have that sense. He certainly didn't advise me about women. Yeah, he was the nominal head of the family, but it was kind of a It operated more as a partnership between him and my mom. And they were married for 60 years. It worked. But still, if you go back, this sense of dominion, it wasn't given to the boomers, and the boomers didn't give it. So this is multi-generational.
Absolutely. And we'll talk more about it on Monday.
And my point, and I have all these quotes, is I'm reiterating this point. If you don't have a stable parental home, which single mommies will show statistically are not, generally the best is to a father and so father and mother to be married for life. That's the most stable and proper home. So, and also almost just as stable is a father only home where the father has custody because he is the head of the household. He can bring discipline. He is the one vested with authority. And he's not the one rebelling against the hierarchy. Anyway, so these are quotes here. So this is another one. For the family is a seminary, the church, and commonwealth. It is a beehive in which the stock and out of which are sent many swarms of bees. For in families, all sorts of people bred and brought up, and out of families are they sent into the church and commonwealth. That's William Googe. So the church, the family is where proper citizens are reared. People that are beneficial to the church and commonwealth are reared. If you don't have a stable family, chances are you're not going to have a stable church or commonwealth.
Well, the Catholics have a term for this. It's called the family is the domestic church. There's a structure and a hierarchy in the family and in the church. And the roles are similar, or there's analogies in Ephesians 5. So today, Nick is citing all this Protestant stuff. Well, most of it goes back, 200, 300, 400 years. But those guys were, if you went 200, 300, 400 years back on the Catholic side, you know what they'd be saying? The exact same thing.
Absolutely. Because it's natural law.
Bingo.
You can look at Chrysostom, Augustine, somewhat to Tertullian as well, and some of the canons of the church, Aquinas.
Yeah. That's even further back. That's in our common
Lombard sentences. Yeah. And Lombard sentences as well. You can find this. This hierarchy, this order, and they talk about natural law.
Yep.
And a lot of times they also go back to Aristotle as well. William Perkins. No, this is Martin Bucer, another famous reformer. For if holy wedlock, the fountain and the seminary of good subjects, be not vigilantly preserved from all blots and disturbances, what can be hoped, as I said before, of the springing up of good men and a right reformation of the commonwealth? Oh, so if you don't get this right, you're going to F everything up. Something so basic to the law of nature. If you don't get this right, you're going to literally screw up generations. You will not have the springing up of good men.
There's a paraphrase.
Except by God's grace.
There's that saying, spare the rod and spoil the child. And in the Bible, there is talk. They use the word rod, but the concept is a father is to discipline his children that they may grow up right. Discipline involves.
My dad did do that. I thank him for it.
Just guidance, advice, imposing boundaries, sometimes punishment, but it was not primarily punishment. When you think discipline, everybody thinks punishment. No, it's imposing order and saying, no, this is the way it is. And that work ethic and living, his example carries over. So if that fatherly discipline in the good sense is not there, the kids are not going to do well. The Bible says so.
If you reject natural law, guys, what happens? If you don't teach your children the natural law, right? They're not going to be raised up to respect that order, and you will have disorder. So Steve's right. I got this one more quote by William Perkins. He was another famous English theologian in the late 16th, early 17th century. He says, marriage was made and appointed by God himself to be the fountain and seminary of all other sorts and kinds of life in the commonwealth and the church. Oh, and William Ames, about the same time period, says on the fifth precept, the fifth commandment, economical society. So that's like household, basically, which is plainly natural, should remain one and the same throughout all ages and nations, wherein is the fountain and seminary of all society, whence also the authority of all others in superior power is set forth and mitigated by the name Father.
Okay. Fountain. I want to go with the words fountain and seminary. Fountain means the source.
Yes.
Seminary. We all think of seminary. Oh, that's a place where pastors and priests go to learn how to be pastors and priests. No.
That's not what they called it then.
This seminary it's okay. It's the source of wisdom. Seminary is place where you learn wisdom. So it's the source and learning for all society. The basic, you need to learn it, or you need a source and you need to learn it and apply it here in the family and then for all society. And if you take out either one, the fountain or the source, you have no source and no learning place to apply it. No wonder.
Also,
you're going to end up with disorder then.
Seminary comes from seed plot or from seed or semen.
Right.
So it's the source.
It's the seed from which good things grow.
Yes.
Or learning. It's another thing where you're incubating. A seminary is where men are incubated to become priests and pastors.
Okay. Would you mind if I shared a screen for a little bit here, Nick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. We'll throw this up here.
This one?
No. There you go.
There you go. Okay.
This is the modern definition of discipline. There's 9 different definitions. Only the 9th has anything to do, and the 4th has anything to do with punishment. All these others are about training in accordance to act with rules or a regimen that improves a skill, a branch of instruction, rigor of training, behavior in accord with rules of conduct. A set or system of rules and regulations. Steve, you were talking about that, and I do think that the word discipline gets unfairly maligned these days.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's a male trait and not a female trait.
Yeah.
Men have discipline. Men are scary. Men are powerful. Men abuse their power. Therefore, discipline is punishment, and it's bad patriarchy. Yeah, bullshit. Mm-hmm. Without discipline in society, you have no civilization.
Yep. So you have no civilization without fathers in the household. You have the responsibility of parents that they should apply to parents, have a just rule of law. They have authority given them by God over their offspring. They have extensive authority. And then in page 27, Dabney says in the Dabney on Fire book, there's no power allowed to any creature under heaven over another responsible creature so wide as this providential power of the parent. And then also he says, let the extent of the parent's legitimate or unavoidable power over his children be pondered. And I'll read from that book. It's right here. It's page 26, I believe. He goes into pretty big detail, or a lot of detail, but I'll skip down towards the end of the page. He says, according to the ordinance of providence and the unavoidable tolerance of the civil law, the parent is irresponsible to any earthly authority in the use and abuse of these sweeping powers. There is no hand beneath the skies that can beneficially interfere with authority between this parental autocracy and its victims. It is true that when the civil law assigns to the son or daughter his majority, he may then throw off the malignant incubus, if he pleases, and begin for himself the arduous task of reversing the evil work of the neglectful parent. He may, if he pleases, then begin the hard task of earning a personal good name in the place of his inherited infamy, and of acquiring knowledge in lieu of ignorance, culture in lieu of boorishness, and competency instead of destitution. But there is no power allowed to any creature in heaven over another responsible creature so wide as its providential power of the parent.
Okay, that
So,
providential power of the parent, does that reside
so
primarily in the man or the woman?
the man, he's the head of the household. The woman does have
Okay,
authority, but in submission to her
okay.
husband.
So
Ultimately
in
to the Lord.
okay, let's go to a theoretical here. Let's say a man and a woman divorce. She takes the kids and moves them elsewhere. And the children
That's
are
personal.
under the authority of a man, and somehow the church decides, oh, we're going to change their membership without consulting him. What say you,
Oh, that
Nick?
didn't happen to anyone here. Oh, so basically, without a proper trial, so this happened to me. I was a minister in good standing in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. She had abandoned and left. I had multiple appeals to many people in the presbytery. Even the church, I had filed charges in the church for abandonment way before. And look, she was trying to permanently take my kids away. I got thrown into jail 3 times because of this woman, right? I tried appealing even to the elders in a church. That's actually what got me in jail for like 8 hours. Because I was like, hey, this is wrong. Of course, I was not served the paperwork that apparently I was transgressing because I was in a different state. I hadn't been served, so I didn't know. All I knew is that I wasn't supposed to talk to my kids. So, yeah, I got thrown in jail for trying to get the church to help over there, which wasn't even my own church. And by the way, while I was in jail, the minister comes and say, oh, you're wrong to file for divorce. Like, well, what else am I supposed to do? She left. Oh, we're trying to reconcile. Oh, well, yeah, that's not trying to reconcile when you keep throwing the guy in jail and you try to steal his kids. Well, you call
When
it kidnapping.
she files
She
a
has no
restraining
authority to
order against him.
usurp the authority of the husband based on false accusations, false charges, and take my kids thousands of miles away. Sorry, no. That's abandonment. That's kidnapping. And I'm fighting to be available for my kids in their lives at that point. That is
Okay, yes, you
because
guys.
these temporary orders turn into permanent orders if you do not fight them.
Case, okay. Oh, it doesn't just happen to Nick. I had no restraining orders against me at that time, but I had a law, something saying I could not be around my children. I could not have private interactions with them, unsupervised visitation. Okay. I had to have supervised. So I went to their Christmas program, or attempted to, in the Catholic Cathedral in Crookston. And I was arrested and put in handcuffs. And then went before a female judge and was found to be in contempt of court because somehow being in public and watching them in a Christmas program violated my contact no contact order that I couldn't be there unsupervised. Gee, does this make sense? And then on top of it, a few years later, in the Catholic Church, my wife decides, oh, yeah, let's let the girls be altar girls. Without my permission, first of all, there should be no altar girls. 0. That is a role for a boy leading up to the priesthood, serving and being up there. That's a masculine role. And they did that without my permission. Still, whether you're Protestant or Catholic, the church is not affirming the man's or the father's authority over his children. They are stamping
That's an abomination.
On that. And
They're
you know what?
against natural law.
You think, oh, it's only the courts and society. No, guess what? Started at the fountain and the seminary. The seed started in the church. The church is disrespecting fathers.
Yes, and they're disrespecting God's natural law and his divine law while you're at it. All in the name of their policy and ordinances and all their complicated bull crap. Well, they gaslight you. They're full of crap. I'll talk more about that soon. But on to the next slide. Herman Bavinck was a Dutch theologian, end of the 19th, early 20th century. He says all these terms about natural law were gradually taken over by Christians associated with biblical texts, such as Matthew 7:21, Romans 2, verses 14 through 15, and chapter 13, verse 1. And according to their content, were identified with the Ten Commandments. That's from Ethics and Politics. It's an essay within his book, Essays on Religion, Science, and Society. And by the way, the Westminster Confession of Faith on the Law of God pretty much makes the same argument, which is chapter 19. It also talks a lot about the light of nature as well in the Westminster Standards. So this is nothing new, nothing out of the ordinary. This is pretty commonplace. But what do the Fifth Commandment and the Tenth Commandment say? I'll pull that up. Oh, here we go. Oh, the Fifth Commandment. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land, which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Oh, so there's authority. The proper home is a father and a mother, and the father precedes the mother in authority as the head of the household. It's not talking about, hey, let's respect the state, let's respect everybody else. No, the Ten Commandments, the primarily thing to be respected is the basic unit of society, that fountain, that seminary, is the household, the father and the mother. If you get this wrong, you get everything else wrong. This is why it's so basic here. If you deny the proper, legitimate, and God-ordained authority of the natural law of father and mother, especially the father as the head of a household, you can get everything wrong and is actually tyrannical. Also, the 10th commandment, verse 17. This is Exodus 20. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Notice the order: household. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, it actually switches up wife first, then house. So wife and house are associated together. It makes a household. A man marries a woman, they have a household, then children and slaves and all that stuff. Not slaves, but it's not supposed to say that. It says manservant, but could be that in the old. Yeah. Anyways, not to get into that. But the point is, there's an order, and whose is this? Is it his? It's not talking about thy neighbor's husband, right? This is addressed to the heads of the household. The Ten Commandments presume that the rulers of society are listening and are going to propagate this to those under them, as fathers should. Don't covet thy neighbor's house, his wife, not her husband. So what belongs to the man, it's not, again, mere property, but there is a certain belonging here. She's not just a piece of property, but she does belong to him and he does belong to her, but he's the head. of that household. The wife is of man.
Wait a minute. So the woman living next door is not my neighbor?
She is, but your neighbor's
Not
wife.
in this sense.
Yeah.
The neighbor is a masculine person.
Yes. In his household.
It's not in this context.
This is household language. This is
right. But in this language, when it says neighbor, it means the man over there, not the woman over there.
yes. Right.
It's masculine. It's man. This is conduct between. It's man to man conduct.
Yes. Household conduct.
It's
heads of household conduct.
right. It's not man to a strange woman conduct. Now that's governed by other things. Okay. But this is just male head of household conduct towards other males.
Yeah,
and heads of household.
Most explicitly, of course, you can introduce, indirectly, yes, you can make other, applications, which of course Christ does. But what's most directly stated is, yes, man to man conduct of one's household to another. So there's an authority and structure here of households and father and mother. That's my point.
It's another,
and that's natural. That's also natural law.
It doesn't mean that the other things are okay. It's just using a generalization. A generalization is things men use all the time. They'll say, this is how it is. And a woman will come back. Yes, but I know an exception, blah, 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 blah. Okay, the exception does not negate the generalization. This is how it generally is. It's written in a generalization, which is actually very efficient because 90+% of the time, I just go with the generalization. That other 10%, now I only have to ponder my way through a 10% exception instead of figuring out the different rules of each and every occurrence, which I don't want to think about things I don't have to think about. So I'll take the efficient approach and use a generalization, which is generally true.
The point is, father rule, the father custody is not only natural law, but it's also expressly given in the Ten Commandments. It's divine law as well. Well, we can move on to kings, magistrates, their limits in dealing with tyrants, since we established the authority of fathers and families and their importance as natural and divine law. Robert Louis Dabney says that in reality, there is no fact among the data of moral science so purely natural as God. He's getting into theory, civil theory. As soon as the mind begins to reason on the phenomena of nature and experience, it is led in the one direction to God, at least as immediately and necessary as it is led in other directions to gravity, causation, conscience, free agency, or any other natural fact. God is not only the proper factor, but the prime one in the philosophy of our moral nature, seeing he created it. And his nature is the concrete standard of moral perfections, and his perceptive will, the expression of that nature, is the practical rule of all our obligations. He is therefore not the only first, but the most essential and most natural of all the factors in every question of natural right. To attempt to discuss those questions omitting him and his will is just as unreasonable as it would have been in Newton to discuss planetary astronomy and the orbital motions of the planets, leaving out all reference to the sun. And this is justified last by the remark that in constructing our theory of civic obligations, we introduce God not in his theological relation of Redeemer, but in his natural relation of Creator and moral ruler. It is the Christian doctrine of God and his relation to the world that he's referencing Julius Stahl, a German theologian, makes the foundation of legal and political science. That's from his last book, The Practical Philosophy. So basically, a lot of times you're going to have problems is that you're proceeding on an atheistic impulse. Therefore, you start having these social contracts. and you no longer have natural rights. You reject natural law. You reject things that are inalienable natural rights, like our Declaration of Independence, some of our Constitution talk about, and you give these away via form of, in the name of a social contract, which I'll get to in a minute. But Dad,
there's another point I want to make to the non-denominational and evangelical Christians. God was creator first.
Yes.
And established the order. And then, yes, Jesus came as Redeemer. That's New Testament. Okay, very important. But Christ did not come to change the order, which was created by creation and creator. So you need the Old Testament, and you have to think, okay, God, he was first creator, then his son, Redeemer. The Redeemer is not more important than the creator.
No.
So you can't just, those were old-fashioned rules. Now Jesus came and we're new in Christ and we can invent a new way of living. No.
No, it didn't happen.
The order of creation did not change, will not change. No. That's natural law. It's established. It's absolutely true. You can't make up new stuff. Now, nope. I know you don't think you're making up new stuff, but it's the primacy. Think through the primacy. You can't invent new ways of living that are contrary to creation and the old way. You can't create a new hierarchy.
No.
Okay.
Well, that was the problem. Oh, you go ahead, Plutarch.
I'll step up here for a second. We can let Nick rest his voice. One thing that I see when I read this is it should be no surprise to us when the atheistic people of our era, particularly, we could say on the left, but there's plenty of them on the right too, come in and we find that they seem to have no problem with giving away our rights or giving up our right. Oh, well, the long range hole punchers, you don't actually need those. The state will step in and save you. Oh, First Amendment, you really shouldn't have that because the state knows what's best for you. So we've said this before on this channel, but to an atheist, only the state becomes their God, but you have to have a God. And I think he's not saying it here, but I think that's kind of what he's getting at, is that you either have God and natural law and natural rights, or you have something else. And that something else is driven entirely by human, I would say human nature, but I was going to say human desire.
Yes. And that's like the Hobbes. Yeah.
Thomas Hobbes. And so what ends up happening in that case is the state comes in as your God and says, no, you don't need this anymore. Because if you're an atheist, order requires hierarchy. If God is the hierarch overall, then you're going to be following that hierarchy. But if you take God out, there's no top of the hierarchy pyramid, if you will. And so you have to put something up there. So the atheist must put state at the top. And look around you, that's what they've done.
Absolutely. And the Bible and church tradition reflecting on natural law is a good corrective and reminds us that, no, you do have natural rights that cannot be usurped. That ought not to be usurped.
The right to self-defense is a natural right.
And actually, Samuel Rutherford and Lex Rex, if you want to read that, he's actually one of the ones who made that argument, and that was carried over into the United States, that concept with the American, we call it revolution, but just say American Revolution, and also in construction of our First Amendment in the Constitution. I mean, yeah. The Bill of Rights. Yeah.
Yep. And the Second Amendment.
Right. You meant, yeah. Sorry. Second Amendment. I missed. Yeah. First Amendment's about free speech. Second Amendment about arms. Sorry. My mistake. But Dabney says civil government is the ordinance of the maker. So it has a divine. It's divinely warranted. Magistrates receive place and power under his providence. They are his ministers to men. That's Dabney. So they have their rule ultimately from God himself. Samuel Rutherford's conclusion to question 1 of his book on Lex Rex says all civil power is immediately from God in its root, in that one, and that first God hath made man a social creature, and one who inclineth to be governed by him. Then certainly he must have put this power in man's nature. So are we, by good reason, taught by Aristotle. Second, God and nature intendeth the policy and peace of mankind. Then must God and nature have given to mankind a power to compass this end, and this must be the power of government. So there is true divine warrant for the government, but as from God. So it has a balance, and Dabney talks about this balance. The truth is that God had immediately, I can't read what it says there.
Immediately and authoritatively instituted 3 organisms.
So man on earth, the state, the visible church, and the family. So in the Westminster Larger Catechisms, it's family, church, and commonwealth. Same thing. And Dabney says they are coordinate in rights and mutual independence. The state or church has no more right to invade the parental sphere than the parent to invade theirs. It is vital to a true theory of human rights that the real independence of the smallest yet highest realm, that of the parent, be respected. That's Robert Louis Dabney.
Well,
so
when we took away, so when you take away God and the state becomes God, then the state would naturally, under natural law, be able to start implementing its own version of morality and law for its own ends, right? Because if there's no God above it, then it can do whatever it wants.
Its own version of natural law, but not true natural law.
Okay. Right. That's why I said it that way, right?
Yeah.
So the state could say, "Oh, well, we need to step in to take these kids away from these men because we, the state, have decided that man bad." Right? The state can do that. Whereas if the state was descendant from God and under the strictures of God's natural law, then they would be, as he's saying here, bound, like the smallest yet highest realm, the real independence of the smallest kid, right? Okay.
Can I point out something else here?
Sure.
He mentions parental authority.
Yes.
Okay. That's referring to the family. And parental authority is not equally shared between man and woman because it's under the structure of the family where it's assumed, Dabney assumes, that the father is the head of the family. And parental authority is yes, it's shared, but it's predominantly under the authority of the father. So when he says parental authority, he's not saying that men and women have equal authority over children.
Yeah, and what happened to you, Steve, and what happened to me is the state and church did invade my realm, your realm.
They disrespected
yes.
it.
And
yes, they did. It's an abomination. That's tyranny.
Usurped parental authority in the structure of the family. And that led to disorder.
Well,
yes.
That has to be. If there is no if there's no bound on the church, on the state from a higher order. What was it? Was it Jefferson that wrote in the it was at the Declaration? He was writing somewhere on the Declaration and why, and he was saying the God, I forget the quote now. Darn it, I've had it in my head
The
5
one that
seconds.
they all want to say the wall of separation, which was actually it was not an official document. It was written to a Baptist church. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it was the one where he
Okay.
was something about this government is only for a moral and just people, and it is insufficient to all others.
Was that Jefferson or was that Adams?
That might have, it might have been Adams, but
No, either way,
but
it's
that
true.
right. The government, the people who built our government understood that there had to be a higher moral order that the government was subservient to, because the government they built was not built for an atheistic world. These men were not atheists. They might not have been Christians as we know it today, but they were not atheists. And I want to make
They
that
might
clear.
have been deists.
Yeah, they were.
There's a few. There's a
yeah,
few.
there were
They
a
still
few.
recognized an order.
Yeah, well, they
Yes.
recognized a higher order of above government. And go ahead.
And an inalienable right. A
Mm.
man's inalienable rights. Does it include his authority over his children? Is that
Yes.
an inalienable right given a duty, actually?
Yes,
you can
duty.
argue that rights don't exist. It's a duty and an authority that a father has over his children. And who is the
Yes.
state to usurp that authority, which is given to me by God? It's my duty. The state
If only
should not alienate me from my children.
Well, what's
Which
interesting is I was having a conversation with one of the guys that actually had my back in the OPC, and he was telling me stories about law in the 19th century and how some of these women were acting really crappy, trying to run away on their husband or just being total, whatever they're doing what they do. And the judges are like, no, 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 you go back home. No, 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 you're going back home. No, respect your husband. You're going back. Like, you're not doing this. They kept families together for the good of society. They actually respected natural law and they were supporting natural law instead of enforcing what is actually contrary to natural law. So that's actually a proper use of the civil magistrate with families, but we don't have that now. We have the opposite. They are the enemies of natural law. They are the enemies of the family, and they are the utmost enemies of fathers.
Well, and
they are tyrants.
And we've talked about this before. Yeah, there are some men out there who do some pretty horrible things to their women. The law has tools to deal with that, and it always did. I mean, Googe, I'm sure, wrote pages on that exact subject. What happened was
Most of the time you don't want to interfere and take the children out, because many times it sets a standard for invasion and usurpation and makes everything worse.
Well, but that's a standard that can only the atheistic viewpoint has to have, because where it would be God and the church that should intervene in these situations
Yes.
of domestic strife. An atheist says there can be no God, there is no God, therefore there can be no God. Then the state has to. So what I'm really trying to get at here is that an atheist always and everywhere, without exception, is also a statist. And I know atheist libertarians. That one kind of, I always look at that one and go, okay, you're going to have to explain this to me, because atheism demands statism. It is a hard demand. Because you took the church away. The church was what was dealing with exactly what we're talking about before. You took it out and you had to replace it with what? Oh, the state.
Okay, so in the French Revolution, they had equalite, but what actually happened? They ended up guillotining a bunch of people. You had the Reign of Terror, which led to Napoleon. Okay, Marxism led to what? Tyranny, state control over everything
Marxism also led
in the
to
USSR.
100 to 150 million dead people.
Yeah,
True.
So yeah, that's a moral winner right there.
yeah. Let's disrupt order and let's impose atheism. Let's see what happens. Mao, Stalin.
Both deeply atheist characters, by the way.
Yes.
Deeply atheist people. Absolutely against the concept of a higher moral order. Absolutely firmly against it.
Except themselves at the top.
Well, we're going to get into that later. We're not dealing with that tonight. We will go there,
Okay.
guys. I promise. It's on my list.
All right. So we're talking about these atheistic and theistic things. So between you and Steve, who wants to read the next one and comment on that?
What is this? The bullet point starting with
Yeah.
Dabney? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Dabney warns of the tyranny of rejecting the theistic theory of civic ethics government and embracing the social contract. Quote, is it not more far likely that tyrannical consequences will be drawn from the other theory, which discards God, the eternal standard and pattern of pure equity and benevolence, which postulates the sinful creature's licentious and unjust wishes as the ultimate measure of his rights, which represents the natural rights of the ruler and ruled as a very different quantity from his civic rights, and which discards the essential distinction between justice and injustice, a priori to legislation. Is not this the safer and freer theory, which founds man's inalienable rights as his duties on eternal and holy moral distinctions, and holds rulers and ruled responsible to the judgment of an equitable heavenly Father, with whom is no respect of persons? Unquote. Now, it's really hard for me to understand that because paragraph length sentences, I don't, I have to read them about 4 times to understand
Oh, okay.
everything in here. Well, I guess there's more than one sentence in here, but we touched on these.
You did. And this is summing up
We
saying,
kind
oh,
of
it's better
described them
under.
before we got to this. So there's
Uh-huh.
nothing in here that's contrary to what we said in the previous 5 minutes.
Uh-huh. Old Dabney was talking about it before us. Oh, so it's better under natural law. It's safer and freer. And there's mutual responsibility from the ruled and the rulers. They're held to an account.
So there's a parallel here, kind of. And guys, you know this from your discussions with women. When you bring up a generalization, she will bring up some exception that's supposed to negate what's generally true. So think of it this way as an analogy. You're bringing up natural law. She's bringing up an exception which negates the natural law. We can't know anything and apply a standard to anything because every situation is different. So you end up going, well, okay, every situation is different. We have to make up new rules to do anything or decide on anything. And the new rules has to take into account the feelings of the person and basically trivialize facts and law and natural law and order. It's all, you know what I feel to be true.
It's me a headache, man. That gives me a headache. I can't deal with that crap.
So there are no ultimate truths. Every situation is different. So therefore, we don't know what we're going to do in this situation because it's different than that one over there. Yeah,
The ultimate
men
truth is the
can't operate
feelings of
that
her.
way.
No, the ultimate truth is how she's feeling.
Which
She doesn't even really know half the time.
Which is why I would even vote for a liberal man over a conservative woman. Because I believe women in positions of authority are ultimately very, very bad. No, I don't want a
Yeah.
liberal man in there. But I'll still,
No, I don't either.
in many cases, choose him over a conservative woman who says things that I agree with. You know, I want to believe her and vote for her
Yep.
and put my faith in her, but I know from experience it's just not a good idea because the outcome is usually bad.
I actually did that on my ballot this year. There was a liberal guy. I looked him up. He's actually done a pretty good job. I don't have any issues with anything he said. And it was a Republican woman. I voted for the Democrat. Why? He's done a good job. He's a guy. We don't need more girls in government. We need less. We need a lot less.
Yeah.
And what really on my ballot this year, what really
Contrary to nature.
yeah, what saddened me was that all the judges were women except one.
That's
And
a
so
recipe for disaster if you're a man.
yeah, exactly. So I voted for the guy. And I mean, guys, if you want to actually change the outcomes that men get in everyday life, it's not the vote for the president that matters. Doesn't matter at all. It's the votes for the judges.
So let me say it this way. Even a man I disagree with has a personal code of conduct. Generally true. Okay, this is not always true. But generally he'll have a personal code of conduct based on reason in his beliefs. And he will rule or decide based on his code of conduct. Women don't operate on that same basis. But
Generally.
I'll
Yeah.
leave it right there.
Yep. All right. Okay, now we get to an interesting turn. When you have these tyrannical judges and magistrates or kings, and they're usurping authority or threatening harm to the populace, you and your own. Samuel Rutherford, again, he was a Westminsterist. He had a founding document, Lex Rex, that was used for some of the laws in the United States, American Revolution, but he's also of a Scottish commission to the Westminster Assembly in the 17th century. So he's Presbyterian. He says, nothing in word or deed tending to the dishonor of the king may be done. Now to resist him in self-defense, being a commandment of God and the law of nature, cannot fight with another commandment to honor the kind. Honor the king, I guess. I think I misspelled that. No more than the fifth commandment can fight with the sixth. For all resistance is against the judge as a man exceeding the limits of his office, in that wherein he is resisted, not as judge. Oh, so when they go against proper law, when they go against the natural law, they're acting contrary to their office as given them by God. And there is a rightful resistance, whatever form that may take. And I got a good quote here from Samuel Rutherford, Lex Rex. There you go. The Law and the Prince. It's another alternate title. He talks about on question 34. He continues this resistance and the limits of power. He says, though the Roman emperors were absolute, of which I much doubt, and though The Senate had made them absolute. I deny that, therefore they cannot be resisted. The unlawful resistance condemned by Paul in Romans chapter 13 is not upon the ground of absoluteness, which is in the court of God nothing, being never ordained of God, but upon reasons of conscience, because the powers are of God and ordained of God. But some may say, volente non fit induria. Yeah. If a people totally resign their power and swear non-resistance to a conqueror, by compact they cannot resist. I answer, neither doth this follow, because it is an unlawful compact, and none is obliged to what is unlawful. For one, it is no more lawful for me to resign to another my power of natural self-defense than I can resign my power to defend the innocent drawn to death and the wives and children and posterity that God hath tied me unto. Second, the people can no more resign power of self-defense which nature hath given them, and they can be guilty of self-murder and be wanting in the lawful defense of kingdom and religion. Third, though you may make one their king with absoluteness of power, yet when he used that transcendent power, not for the safety, but for the destruction of the state, it is known they could not resign to another that power which neither God nor nature gave them, to wit, a power to destroy themselves. Also, Paul nowhere commandeth absolute subjection to tyrannous governors and tyrannous acts. So there is a path of lawful resistance. So resistance to tyrants is obedience unto God. You're resisting to obey God and perform that God has given you by his command and by natural law.
So this is a question for Plutarch.
Okay.
My right to self-defense include my right to defend my children against the
Yes.
power of the
Yep.
state.
Yes, it
That's
does.
kind of alluded to in here.
It
Yes.
does. Whether or not that's presently codified in our current law, I would say probably not. But if you want to talk
But it is from
natural,
God.
right? Exactly. In terms of our modern legal system, no, you don't.
No.
No,
And I would
I
also go
understand
against
that.
like vigilantism. I don't think it's wise to act individually. But hey, if you have a cohort of other will-minded like sheriffs and civil magistrates, go for it.
Well, I mean, the Declaration of Independence
Yeah.
says what? It's a right to life, liberty, and happiness.
Pursuit of.
And
Yeah.
before it was edited, it was right
Property.
to, yeah, not happiness, to property. And property is that which is under the dominion of a man. Property, therefore, in this sense, would include a wife and children because those are under his dominion, under his authority.
And
Not to
this is
be
where I got
owned, not to be abused, but he is a husband. A husband means the master of that which is under his dominion. So he's to look out for it and protect it. And you know what? Christ's example, even to die for that, because the husband is to the wife as Christ is to the church. Christ died for the church. The husband duty to protect and, yes, even give his life for his wife and his children. But he does have authority over them.
Steve.
So this is why I spent 2 weeks in jail, guys, on this very principle. As a minister of the Lord Jesus Christ at the time, they had invaded a church, they had arrested me, I was put on false charges, and my kids were taken 1,000 miles away, and I was admonished to not basically be able to perform my ministerial functions of serving communion. And I said, no. You invaded the ordinances given to me by God, and I took an oath to whatever form of persecution. I will faithfully, even if persecution comes, I'm to be faithful to God. Right? So I'm going to faithfully do my duty, even though you're telling me not to. I have to obey God rather than man, because it's not their authority to usurp the authority of Christ and His ordinances. Second, they took my family away from me unlawfully. They usurped my authority as a father based on false charges. Let them go 1,000 miles away, where she could set up her custody of the kids, and therefore, essentially, they were kidnapped from me.
Hey, Nick,
And so I sent a letter. I sent a letter to several ministers and which appeared before the judge and was read publicly in the court. And I said, I have never obeyed such tyrannical decrees and I never will. And I signed it, Reverend Nicholas K. Barnes. 2 weeks in jail. She's a tyrant. She's a usurper. She's a Jezebel. And where are the guys that supported me? Where was the church? Oh, yeah, they kicked me to the curb. Thank you very much, guys.
So you're saying the female judge did not understand the principles by which you were living?
Oh, absolutely not. They're fucking idiots. Most of the law, I think most of the lawyers I talk to and they're absolute fucking idiots. They don't even know the very principles this country is founded upon. Fucking idiots.
Well, unfortunately, we've gotten to a situation going back to, circling back on what Steve said, where you're right. Because the law is written by people now who do not understand the principles and do not care to understand the principles that this country was founded on. It goes back to what I was saying, Adams, this is a government for the moral and just, and it is incapable or unsuited to any other. And because they don't know, because they weren't taught these principles, they're writing laws that do, in fact, directly go against those principles. And so now you're in the situation where you have laws on the books that directly usurp the natural law. They're in direct conflict with natural law. But they also in direct conflict with our very founding documents. And it's not like people want to make it some grand conspiracy. No, I think idiots is a better term. They're fools.
Well, they're fools. They are mid intelligence. Midwits. Yes. They're smart enough to get through law school or whatever, and repeat back and, kind of know the terms, but they do not adhere to the principles or even understand the principles of where things come to. I mean, it's beyond them. That's why a hierarchy actually works much better than a democracy, because in a democracy you have the midwits and the lower having actually more say than the higher intelligence people who understand these things, because the bell curve on intelligence, and we'll just use that as
talked about this.
Just a placeholder for this concept.
And most women are midwits.
Way more people in the middle than there is at the upper end, because it's a bell curve. So there are very few people who really have the intelligence to understanding to apply rules to the masses. And if the masses rule, you're going to get
average at best. Average is the best you can hope for.
Yeah, average at best. It's not going to adhere to principles. It's going to be on a whim.
I want to point out that our founding fathers actually did know this. There's a reason.
It's crap.
Right. There's a reason why you had to own property to be able to vote. And that isn't even new for them. They were reading Aristotle. They were reading Plato. Where did that idea come from? The Greeks and the Romans. It's not new. It works.
Okay. It was men. So how did a man get property?
Well, he has to work for it. He has to earn.
Or he inherited it.
Yeah, or he inherited it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If he inherited it, it was by a father who had the mental skill to acquire it, or his father. and it was passed down. And if the father owned it, he was smart enough to keep it. And he was affluent, wealthy enough to actually educate his son in these things. So, yeah, we'll let that guy vote. And if a guy who was born in poverty was smart enough, hardworking enough to acquire property, he rose up into that realm of qualified people who have the mental capacity and understanding and take responsibility for himself and his family and his well-being, and therefore that serves as the foundation, and therefore he probably has enough intellect to actually vote for higher level things.
Well, and Steve, there's
proven
there's a third leg to that. If a man
Okay.
inherits property and he cannot steward it well, and he mortgages off to debt and he loses it, he no longer gets to vote because he was not intelligent enough. Intelligence and IQ is, we need to bring back a little bit of hierarchy around the concept of intelligence. Now, I'm not saying we need a full technocracy. That has its own problems. But if a man, as you say, if a man is smart enough to raise himself to the level of property owner and keep himself there, he absolutely does deserve the right to vote. And if a man is dumb enough to lose his property, he absolutely deserves to have his right to vote taken away.
It's like a form of aristocracy, representative aristocracy.
Kind of, except aristocracy tend to include birthright. They tend to make it the birthright, not the meritocracy that Stephen and I are talking about. So
yeah, birthright has a role too.
It has a role, but I think it works best when you allow them to lose it of their own accord.
Sure.
And a lot of aristocracies that went wrong missed that. Birthright became the sole thing. Is, oh, well, I was born this way, so I automatically earn it just by birthright. And the kid in particular, after 3 or 4 generations, they've done studies on this. After 3 or 4 generations, the kids are usually, frankly, retarded, and they can't keep up, and they should lose it. And so aristocracy doesn't really have that built in, whereas the American conception of meritocracy at the time of the founding did. And I do think that is better than the royalist conception, which we'll get into later.
So, Lane asked a question. Who wants to answer that one?
Shall women have a right to vote?
No. It's not natural.
I think she's asking specifically women property owners have a right to vote.
No.
You know what? Even then,
no.
She's not
Just no.
to have dominion. The few women that are capable of doing that and would make good voting, responsible people, their loss of voting rights or inability to vote is not primarily going to change anything.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not your right to vote that really matters. It's your desire to have just and good leaders. So, you know what? If I lose my right to vote, oh, well, you know what? It doesn't matter. If
I don't see anything good has
5% of
come
men
from
lose their right to vote, so what? If the 5% of women that are capable voters, I'll go down a limb here and say if the 5% of women that should or could vote can't vote, it's not going to change the outcome.
Not by much. I mean, there might be some edges, but I'm just not sure it's worth. I'm not sure chasing the edge cases is worth it. And
the proof is in the pudding. It's been absolutely destructive to society. So no.
That's the easy thing. Instead of allowing some, open the door an inch. How long before the door is wide open?
Yeah.
If you lock the door, throw the deadbolt, it's not going to just blow open over time.
Well, Steve, here's a different way to frame it. If a mother allows her child to steal a piece of candy from the store and doesn't punish the child, is that child not going to think, "Oh, I can steal from the store," and they go back later on in life and they clean out the store? Everyone's going to say, "Oh, you're making a slippery slope fallacy." No, I'm not. I'm actually that's a statement based on present data that we have. But the point here is that if you give most people an inch, they will take a mile.
Yes. And that has happened.
Yes.
Well, and since they've been given an inch, they've rejected natural law. I'm going to tie back into our discussion. We've we've left a system. We gave them an inch, a way out to reject, the divine, the theistic uh, rule of law based on natural law. We've left a system of law largely based on natural law. We've long replaced much of our laws with the tyranny of an elite. Francis Schaeffer talked about this in his books in the 70s and 80s. We've long replaced much of our laws with the tyranny of an elite, the tyranny of elites imposing arbitrary sociological law, our later version of the social contract in its godless atheistic permutations.
This is exactly what I was saying half an hour ago. Like,
Yes,
exactly.
that's where we're at. It's actually, we still have some natural law, on the books in the Constitution, but functionally, policy dictates this, and it's
Mhm.
actually become this sociological law that trumps what is actually written. Arbitrary sociological law, which rejects God. So we have a corruption and rejection of natural law, and therefore tyranny, especially in marriage and family courts. So now making the transition now. Stephen Baskerville's latest book, Who Lost America, which you all, I think, have read or are reading. I finished mine. He
I
says
haven't finished yet.
the blueprint for the current leftist coup came from the welfare state. I can't see what to put. He then states that the welfare state is the founding institution of socialist government. The welfare state is the original deep state, he says. Oh, so you're something outside the natural order, adding powers to the government that you don't have. It says,
Well,
Jared.
Oh, let
go
me
ahead.
draw a parallel. The welfare state is therefore the fountain and the seminary.
Yes.
What's happening? The
Yeah, he gets
source
into that.
and the seed that grew into the monster we have today.
Absolutely. And there's a financial incentive for the deep state. I'll say one, or I mean, not the deep state, uh, the welfare state, which has evolved into family, marriage and family courts, and all the bureaucracy and everything else. There's this financial aspect. We'll talk about that a little bit. And judges therefore have a strong incentive to channel money to the lawyers. This is whereby fathers are removed from custody, which I'll get into. The main source of the money is fathers. Having seized legal control of his children, the judge then presides over a feeding frenzy in which everything the father has and can earn in the future is doled out to political clients of the court, an elite. Sociological law.
Well, and we've also talked in the past about how the welfare state is run through the government, and the government actually
Yes.
gets money. The government doles out money to the government, not to the women, but it doles out money to the government to run the system of wealth transfer to the women on the basis of how many women are receiving transfers from the men. So there is a perverse financial incentive for the state to separate as many children from their fathers as possible so that the state, your state, and I'm not talking the federal government. The federal government is in this case more of a clearinghouse. It is your state that is incentivized to separate you from your children because they get more money from the federal government when they do.
Let me explain that. Okay, I paid spousal support and child support in Minnesota. The money, one time it was close to $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month was taken from me, or I had to pay when I was self-employed, transferred to my ex-wife. As a fee, the state of Minnesota took 3%. So they were earning $60 from me. But that's just trivial, because as an incentive for the federal government gave the states an incentive. If you make these fathers pay for their kids, they won't be on the welfare system, and we will give the county in which this happened dollar for dollar amount. If you collect $2,000, we will pay you $2,000 out of the Social Security system. So
it's a racket.
Their whole system, it's a racket, and they impose fees on you to feed the money coming in, and they absolutely need to jack up what fathers are paying. And you know what? It wasn't even based on my income. It was based on imputed income, how much they think I could make, which is that was in the previous economy when oil and gas was doing good. Now it's not. I can't earn that much. So sad. Too bad. You're still paying. It's imputed income. Doesn't even have to be real.
So the court in this case literally gets to make shit up. Oh, well, we feel, and this is where the female judges become a huge problem, because the female judge is going to be like, well, I feel like you, with your degrees and your intelligence, should be able to make more. So I'm going to impute that you can make more.
Exactly.
So basically,
exactly
not only have they kidnapped his kids with violation of natural law, given custody over to the mother, they're actually making money off your misery.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're making money.
Absolutely wicked.
And they're making money off of good families that have stayed together, where the father is working and married and has kids. Why? Because we all pay a Social Security tax.
Yes.
So they're double dipping.
First of all, they stripped my money and gave it to the lawyer, and made me give it to the lawyers. Then they stripped my future income because it comes out of my paycheck. Then they stripped my retirement because it's coming out of my retirement fund.
You mean your Social Security?
Yeah, I mean, it's not technically mine. It probably won't be there when I need it.
Probably not.
But okay, they're just sucking all the wealth. And the family is the foundation of society. When you suck all the wealth out of the family, sorry, you are hurting the children, because now there's little to no inheritance.
And they're financially incentivized to do it.
Yes. And we recently did a video on the birth rate, and everyone's like, oh, we need to convince people to have more kids. You are not going to convince a sane, rational man to have more kids when the state is incentivized to steal that man's current and future wealth. Why?
To destroy him.
Well, because here's the thing. If I have kids right now and I pay my Social Security tax, that Social Security tax is going to fund this machine that wants to take my future kids away. Okay. Why, as a rational man, would I want to have kids in an environment where even if I do everything right, I'm still penalized? Okay. And God help me if my wife decides that she wants to go ride the carousel again and wants to take the kids as a paycheck. Is it any wonder that men are opting out? You will not get men to produce more kids by saying, oh, well, women are more promiscuous now, so men can be more promiscuous. No, they're not, because the government, even if you're not married, the government can come and say, nope, you still owe her child support, which is why we see that men are having less sex. There is nothing you can do. There is no tax incentive you can give me to have kids right now. It is not an economic problem. And so many people, including people, and this is where Mr. Musk actually gets things wrong. Musk thinks, oh, if we just solve the economy, the kids problem will solve itself. No, it will not.
So let me point out something here. Okay, Plutarch, I think you have a good wife. But there are no restraints on her doing that to you. Okay, you don't have kids, but there's still no restraints on her. Correct. You can impose no restraints on her. Society will impose no restraints on her. None. So, okay, it's all okay. You vetted her. You think you married a good one? Probably did. But you know what? I thought I did too.
So did I.
And every man thinks he's marrying a good woman who will not do that to him.
Correct.
But in over 50% of the cases, that man was wrong.
Over 50%. It's 56%, guys. What we're saying is that you have a worse than coin flip chances, even after vetting, of getting it right. And the reason why, when you see those sort of statistical anomalies show up, that's because there's a thumb on the scale somewhere. And this slide and Baskerville and Nick, that they're talking about that thumb on the scale. That's what we've been talking about. The government is putting its thumb on the scale and then scratching its head as to why we don't have enough kids. Yeah, well, of course we don't. And we're not going to. It will not be fixed until this is changed. I don't care who you vote for. Who you vote for doesn't matter. Okay. I've said this before. Trump is an old New York Democrat. The left just moved away from him. He is not going to bring back. He's actually for most of this welfare system. He's actually for most of this family law. Okay. He is not your savior. Stop treating him like Jesus. That always annoyed me. I mean, he's pro-abortion, which I think the whole thing about that is hysterical. But okay. And that's why I've said I don't think this election matters. It doesn't. Your choice.
Problems that nobody's addressing. It's just kicking the can down the road.
Exactly. What we've been talking about tonight, what Baskerville talks about, what Dabney has talked about, these are the problems that must be, these are the solutions. These are the problems that must be solved. Until these are solved, nothing changes. Sorry, I'm ranting. I know.
No, I'm going to get back to this. Yeah, so there's this whole welfare system with financial incentives. Your women are financially incentivized to leave you, and the government is incentivized to let that happen. And the system itself is full of radicals. The growth of the welfare under progressivism, the New Deal, this is Baskerville again, especially the Great Society with its war and poverty, accomplished what slavery, can't say that, and segregation could not. It decimated. Oh, we're supposed to help, but in progress. But what actually happened, it decimated the African American family and created a permanent, self-perpetuating underclass of dependent single mothers, fatherless children, and criminalized fathers. That's in Who Lost America 30.
Okay, let me point out something here. There was a thing called the Moynihan Report. Daniel Moynihan, before he was senator, wrote this. He had a plan. We're going to have postal deliveries twice a day, and we're going to employ all kinds of black men to do this. They will be the breadwinners. It will pass wealth on to them. We'll have better productivity in our country, and they can raise their family. Nope, we're not doing that. We're going to give money to black women as a war on poverty. So, this exact thing was discussed or brought up by men much older than us, and that probably, I don't know when that came out. Look it up. The Moynihan Report was probably in the 50s or 60s. It's a long time ago.
So it's from its inception, basically, the war on poverty, the Great Society was actually destroying families. And this welfare system, it was socialist, again, in its origin. It's not Christian. It is who took it up from the beginning, according to Baskerville, was radical women. That's feminists, basically. And he speaks on, Baskerville talks about how the private Christian charity would regulate on its own morality, and refusal to condone single mother was actually taken over now by this welfare system. They kicked the Christian morality out, the free generosity of Christians that was not government controlled. And with a certain class of women took it up. And the professional social workers who developed a vested interest in perpetuating the poverty and created problems that justified their existence. Single motherhood was their bread and butter and went from an evil to an asset. Oh, again, so they make money off of it. Oh, we were created to help resolve things, but no. We need to justify our own existence, and let's make money off of this. So they become an asset.
He kind of says Christian women didn't do this. Yes, they did. There was this thing called the Christian Women's Temperance League. It was active pre-prohibition. We need to abolish alcohol, because working men are going out and they're drinking and they're spending all their paychecks at the bar and not bringing it home to their families, and their children are starving. So the Christian women, believe this, sought to control men.
But now you have a government arm to help control the men for the empowered women, basically leeches. Baskerville states welfare was now empowering feminist social workers and acquired new quasi-police powers that originated to administer the chaos of single mother homes and welfare communities, in which they found far more empowering than just doling out money. Child protection, domestic violence programs, and child support enforcement. These programs not only further entrenched single motherhood, but also elevated the social workers to the status of plainclothes police. Most importantly, they displaced the fathers by usurping the roles of protectors and providers for the women and children. They basically, it's feminist power.
So
it's the power for socialists and feminists, and they have their own courts.
Well, so the atheist feminists have come in and replaced. Well, they have come in and replaced the natural order using the state, which is exactly what
contract.
Well, it's what I was saying before. An atheist always and everywhere must be a statist. And here it is. This is what it actually. This is our current iteration. This has happened before in history. Yeah, the details are different. This is our current iteration of atheistic statism.
Yes, and the Christian women, they marched with the sisterhood and believed the atheist women. And they became tools of the atheist women because of the sisterhood.
They worship their own femininity more than they do the true God.
You mean women make idols of themselves? Never.
Yeah, and it's just look
That's
at the church.
Funny, and that is so true. What does a woman use? What's her greatest asset? what does she use
Her
when she
body,
gets
her sexuality.
Yeah, what's the center of her power? She uses, okay, I'm going to say it, her vagina. She uses that.
Stream
And
cancel.
when she's out of money, she's going to sell it to get money. She's going to use that access to sex to get a man to behave, to wife her up, whatever. Yeah, and that's, she may merit skills. No, I'm beautiful and I got this thing you want.
Oh,
Maybe I'm overstating it in a crass manner, but it's kind of true.
Kind of
Well,
true.
they know they're the weaker sex, and they manipulate that to get all this protection, and they throw off the order that God has given them. Oh, daddy state, big daddy state. No, husband, kick him to the curb. Don't need him. No, but I'll enslave him to pay for me. Oh, and the feminist, the Gestapo, feminist Gestapo, secret police, and their illegitimate courts, which actually you don't have proper constitutional rights in a lot of these family and divorce courts. Yeah,
That is
these are
correct, yes.
tyrants. These judges are acting as tyrants, not as lawful judges in those places.
Oh, let me say, they will actually laugh in your face if you bring up anything constitutional rights, about your constitutional rights in family court.
These are
They will
illegitimate courts.
laugh their ass off at you.
They're
Well,
illegitimate courts.
and
It's tyrannical authority.
there is neither due process nor a right to trial by jury in family courts, if I recall correctly, right?
That's correct.
I haven't been through it, but like you guys have. But due process and right to trial by jury are codified in the Constitution. Family courts are they are unconstitutional, illegal, quasi governmental agencies. They are not. They're not. They actually have no legal basis for existing.
It's a civil court with police powers,
which is actually okay. I won't say that word. Can't. I've got a Rolodex of words rolling through my heads, but none of them I can say right now. But it's a sign of a government that has turned, for lack of a better word, tyrannical.
That's what I said. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, there were other words I was thinking about, and then I said, no, YouTube can't. YouTube would kill us for that.
I don't know those words. I'm bad about that.
I know you've been just steamrolling tonight. I know.
They reject the natural law. Obviously, that's tyrannical, but themselves are contrary to their own laws of the state, right? Own laws of our own land. So they're further illegitimate and further tyrannical. And they have this whole system. It's almost like they have it's like the secret. It's like that's a shadow government almost.
Yeah, and we
like deep state, as Basketball says.
We have a friend who has been on this podcast. I call him a friend, Shaw. He lives in California. He was a child support officer. He talks about this extensively. He has his own YouTube channel. This is Shaw. You'll see him around here again. He's going to be on Elena's Saturday show sometime in the next month, I would guess. But yeah, I mean, he will talk about this. You can find out if everything we're saying is basically true and a lot more information from him.
You mean we're not just pulling this out of our ass? Darn it.
Half the things I pull out of my ass actually are true.
Okay. Enough talking about asses besides myself. Hee haw. All right. So Baskerville's taken into custody. So I'm going to keep on this argument. His thesis of the book. This is basically the thesis of his book, Taken into Custody, which I have right here. Another book I recommend you read. I haven't even read through it, but it's very in depth. It talks about the denial of the Constitution, judicial kidnapping of kids, and among other things. But the thesis of his book is that the governments throughout the United States and other democracies are engaged by accident or design in a massive campaign against fathers and fatherhood, and that this campaign lies at the root of the larger crisis that is undermining parents generally, threatening the institution of marriage, destroying the family, and ruining the lives of children. Even, what does it say there?
Even
Well-intentioned
well-intentioned fatherhood and marriage.
Campaigns could exacerbate the problem by further infusing the power of the state machinery into private family life. Weakening fatherhood and parenthood creates a vacuum of power in which the state can fill. And they have done that.
So this is what I was ranting about with Musk and even people like the Wilson clan over in the red pill adjacent space. It is not enough to simply get more people married, because getting more people married, particularly to promiscuous whores, is just setting them up to become wards of the state and to give the state even more power. That's why I say that we can't have men getting married right now. We can't, because if they do and they have kids, it further empowers the state. That is the pernicious evil of the twisted evil of the way this system is set up. That even doing the right thing but it is biblical. I completely agree. It is biblically right to have. Yes. Oof. Doing the biblically correct thing empowers the enemy. And I'm not a theological scholar on what to do in that case, but that is the system that has been set up, and we must acknowledge that.
Let me point out something else. If you consider the state or the system to be a starving monster, is fewer and fewer men wife up women and have families. Those that do and have children will become the potential fuel to feed the monster. Yes. The further men go in this, call it the marriage strike, and it's not conscious, it's just prudent, the more they're going to come after those that remain, because they're hungry. They're going to starve unless they consume your family. So, by this analogy, things will only get worse. As a starving person will do damn near anything to get a meal. A starving state will prey on damn near anyone and anyone with the resources to feed the monster. I don't think anybody's ever said that, made that analogy before. It just crossed my mind now.
Let's talk about Leviathan. Our government is a Leviathan. Okay, it's devouring. You have children. You and your children could feed the Leviathan. The more children you have, feed the Leviathan. The only way to defeat Leviathan is for someone stronger than Leviathan. Starve, or someone stronger than Leviathan.
But the Leviathan is going to get brutal and hungry for anything it can consume to keep it going.
Right.
So you men out there who are getting married and having kids, watch out. Get your situation in order, because you know what? Maybe your wife isn't your potentially worst enemy if she decides wrong. Maybe it's the state. And the state and the sisterhood have a lot of influence over your wife. And you know what? He is vulnerable and susceptible to that influence.
Okay. Shu, yes, I want to address this. We don't have any problem with the Wilsons, what they're doing or why. It's just I what I'm really trying to say is that it's obvious that they haven't studied this enough. That's it. That's all. And this stream in particular is an invitation to study the problem. There's a reason that Nick is going from all the way from Aristotle to Baskerville's book that just came out, like a couple months ago, right? The Nick has studied this problem the way only a nerd pastor like Nick can. I hope that's a fair way to describe you, Nick.
I'm fine with it. I've been called worse.
But until we truly understand where the actual problem is, no action we take will solve it. In fact, the only thing that can happen by taking any action without understanding is to make the problem worse. So while I don't disagree with Musk and the Wilsons and all the other people raising the alarm about the birth rate, we've raised that alarm here too. The difference is we've raised that alarm while looking at the relevant literature and data and saying, guys, it's not just a problem between men and women. It's not just an economic problem. It is a deep, deep legal problem that is going to take an enormous amount of energy and, frankly, pain to fix.
And this all goes back to, it's the vacuum and the welfare state. But behind that drove this emphasis was a former rejection of the law of nature, that of patriarchy, that allowed this to happen. This is the economic arm of rejecting the patriarchy. So he said back in the 19th century, women's rights will destroy Christian civilization. I think it pretty much has happened. It's on the brink of collapse, if it's not collapsed already. We're not really a Christian civilization anymore, even though there's lots of Christians here. He says, but Baskerville says, everybody should have this reaction if you grasp what we're talking about now. Those who grasp the full dimensions of this rejection, this system that against fathers and all the courts, all the crap. Those who grasp the full dimensions invariably demand such a cynical and exploitative system simply be destroyed, root and branch. Unfortunately, so many people now have a stake in the divorce industry that proposals for meaningful reform are few. Those that arise are not likely to be effective, and some are likely to make matters worse. Yeah. You have to take it out its roots, and he gives the root of starving the system. Or you could just say, that's probably the easiest ways to starve the system versus people changing their mind and reversing the 19th Amendment and reasserting patriarchy. I think that's the more immediate solution, is starving the system.
Yes.
And this kind of gives us, I think it's not just a mal's quality that we live under, that we have to re-educate everybody. Yeah, it's kind of where we are. But it's also this strange libertarianism as well. Anyways, I'm going to go back to the proof is in the pudding.
Let me
you
say
say
something.
It's not that bad. Okay.
You cannot reform something that is contrary to natural law, to divine law, and to the order that God established. There is no amount of reform to this divorce custody system that can fix it, because at its core, and Nick just mentioned that, it's wrong from the very foundation.
Yes.
You can't fix something that's against the natural order.
You have to return to natural law, and sometimes it means you have to let the idiocy take its course so that they say, oh, how did we get here? Oh, maybe they knew what they're talking about. Maybe then we should return to patriarchy after a lot of pain.
Now, okay, someone is saying, well, what about those women that blah, 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 abusive husband,
Don't
blah,
care.
blah, actually abusive? Yes.
Okay, that's
What can I
sad.
say?
Yeah,
They exist.
that's sad. They do.
Yes. You can't save everybody. But by trying to save
No,
everybody, you hurt everybody. Do I
exactly.
want all young women to be going to college and having their fun and their, racking up body counts in their 20s and then hit the wall at 30 and say, oh, I need to find a man to wife me up and, have kids, and then get tired of that. Oh, he's boring. And then divorce him 10 years later and then go on their merry way with the kids? No, I don't. Giving them that liberty seems to be not working out so good. So by restraining their liberty to do that, am I actually benefiting them in the long term? And
Steve,
certainly benefiting children.
what you're saying is that restraining the more extreme of our impulses is actually a benefit for humans.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that's called discipline.
Oh, there it is.
That's a proper use of the law as well. Is a restraint of evil. That's a proper use of the law.
Yep.
So, guys, natural law is correct, and the custody, therefore, of fathers is correct. And the proof is in the pudding. I'm going to show statistics now. There you go. Now, blow this up, zoom. Rising share of Americans see women raising children on their own as cohabitation is bad for society. Oh, but only 47% of single women raising children on their own, they say, is bad for society. An increase of 7 percentage points from the 40. 37% says it doesn't make a difference. Okay, so that's what people think about it. Means that they still don't get it. Yeah, some are catching on, but as a whole, we're a blinded society who doesn't understand natural law.
Nick, you're
That's
correct.
Statistics of what they think.
And I want to point out
actual statistics.
And I want to point out that was Pew Research. That is a well recognized and respected polling organization. The other thing is that 7% shift is actually a huge number in the amount of time we're talking about. It's 3 years, so they're doing it's a 3-year shift. So 2018 to 21. That's actually a huge shift.
That's a year thing. I'll let you talk.
So the point is, though, what we've been talking about, letting the pain happen. Well, the pain has been happening and the shift is starting. It's why Nick said earlier that the pain and starving the beast is probably the quickest way to solve this problem. And as we talked about in our episode on demographics, we don't have a lot of time to solve the problem. So this is going to hurt a lot because we don't have a lot of time. So we have to go with the most efficient, not the, oh, well, we can take our time, figure out how we're going to manage this transition. Nope. We have to go for the kill shot.
What's going on today? 23 million children live in a single parent family. 14.3 live in mother-only households. 6 million live with cohabiting parents, and only 3.5 million kids in a father-only household, which is actually the best of all those combinations besides a dual family, a properly constituted family.
Cohabitating is the worst, by the way.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson was talking with, it was Godsod. What he said, 100 times more likely than any other predictor for a child to have a criminal rap sheet is when a woman lives with another man who is not the father. 100 times more predictive than anything else. Shit, guys. And there's 6 million kids. There are 6 million future criminals right now.
1 in 3 kids in America lives in a single family home.
Okay, why is that cohabiting bad? Okay, they will say, oh, there is a greater chance that, the children will be abused by the unrelated father. Okay, absolutely true. But it doesn't mean it's a high probability. Here's what I think is the problem. If the cohabiting means baby mama, kids from a prior man is in there, he may be trying to act like a father, but she has the authority over her children. Therefore, he does not have the ability to raise them right, to make decisions. Yes, that word discipline. Why did my second marriage fail? I was trying to be a good father and care for them as my daughters. I even asked them, do you want me to be your father? They answered yes. But when it came down to it, times got tough. No, these are my children. That's what she thought. Well, and true. So she asserted her authority, and I'm out of there. So it was okay, even though it seemed like we had the natural order, the proper order of man had, and I tried to put that in place, be a benevolent father, but I'm still going to have the authority. Ultimately, I didn't have that, and I couldn't have that.
Well, the proof's also in the pudding. 1 in 3 kids in single family homes. Bad socioeconomic disadvantages, emotional behavioral impact, depression, so more instability, problems, child development problems, influence in education, including dropping out of school. Yep. And here's this one. More stats. Here we go. Many school, what's the word for that?
Unalivers. I don't think we have a good word for that for YouTube.
Are the product of broken homes. Wow. They have been increasing the strong ability that this is a product of fatherless single parent homes, resulting from a failed social experiment by the family court system. Family courts often enforce sole maternal custody even when both parents are fit, resulting in broken homes with single parents. This is a significant issue because broken homes are leading to adolescent epidemics. Various negative outcomes are associated growing up in single mother homes.
So
Okay,
Nick, what you're saying is that the
statistics,
the rise, the increase in the number of school incidents is that sort of really began in the 90s. Oh, wait. You mean at the same time as we started to impose all these pro-female court laws and and it just so happens
if they
that
have no father, they hate the heavenly Father, so they have no standards. And their mother probably has no standards why she left the guy in the first place. Yeah, there's exceptions. I get it. Everybody's going to go on the exceptions, but on the whole, nah.
Right. So what you're saying is that if you were to graph the rise of single moms and the rise of school incidents, they might, track a bit, probably with some delay, but so you're saying we could fix this problem and the state benefits by not fixing this problem. Oh, interesting. Because they can turn around and use this problem to tell you to give up your other natural rights.
Well, the states gain authority. And control. But okay, men, whatever men do, most men, they're putting order to things. They're solving problems.
Discipline the
When a
children, having standards and
Yeah,
enforcing them,
discipline.
imposing
But when
morality
a
upon them.
woman divorces,
Yeah.
she's stepping out of the order,
She exemplified the greatest
and
rebellion against order in her life.
right, and so she will create disorder among the children because she's created disorder in her life. He will create disorder in her children's life because he's outside of the bounds of natural law and authority. Certainly,
Screwed poverty.
there are a small number of women who, yeah, there is valid reasons for this, but not over 50%. Come on. It defies reason if you think all these over 50% of men who get married are bad men. Do you really believe that? Come on.
It's the same thing as man and bear in the forest. It's the same rhetorical tactics that are used to convince women that the bear really is a better choice, and it's the same result. The Statistically, I think I don't have this number in front of me, but it's less than 5% of men are actually um well, a word, let's just say. Like they statistically it's less than 5% of men. It's not 56%. So that other 51%, sorry ladies, that's you saying I just don't feel it, or Kevin in accounting is looking real fine over there. I want me some of that.
I can do better.
Uh-huh.
All right, what's the result, guys? The strongest predictor of whether a person will end up in prison is if they were raised by a single parent. I think that's a bit confusing, but if you look down, it's actually look closely tied not to dads, but single mother homes. In
They
1996,
can't
70% of
say
inmates,
single mothers.
Well, they did.
I do here, 70% of inmates in
Yeah,
state
but
juvenile
they're
detention
trying
centers were
to
raised by single mothers.
yeah.
They are trying to bury the lead, though.
Yeah.
Yep. The absence of the father increases daughters' vulnerability to exploitation by those outside the family. Oh, promiscuity.
Does that mean promiscuity?
Yeah. They have daddy issues, so they find other men to take
Okay.
that attention.
Okay. You know what? We got very few single mothers or women that watch our channel. But you want your daughter to be promiscuous? Yeah, get rid of her father. Yeah,
Pretty much.
don't do that.
Yeah, girls from homes without fathers are 6 times more likely to become pregnant as teenagers. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Fatherless home statistics. Okay. 60% of youth unaliving themselves are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homelessness and runaway children from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavior disorders come from fatherless homes. 80% of GR Gray ists with anger problems come from fatherless homes. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. 70% of juveniles in state operated institutions come from fatherless homes. 85 of all youth sitting in prisons grew up in a fatherless home. The proof is in the pudding. You take the father away, you reject natural law, you have chaos, you have disorder, you have a society disintegrating.
To the church.
So-
Get that
You
through your
did
head.
this. To the church.
You did this.
You did this.
So, to you women who choose to divorce, you are creating an unsafe environment for yourself and for your children. Therefore, by reason, you don't really love your children. Because if you loved them, you wouldn't want this outcome. Yeah, that happens in the future, not now. Yes, you can throw him under the bus and make him the bad guy, the scapegoat, and then say, I've done no, you can eat, wipe your mouth and say, I've done no wrong. But your children will bear the consequences. And statistics show that. And I know women don't really understand statistics. Yeah, that might be true for everyone else. But in my case, it's not true. Yeah, bullshit.
Okay. And guess what? The church didn't even listen to Dabney over 100 years ago. I said this before. That all this proof I showed you in the pudding, he predicted. All this crap. He said God's ordinance, the only effective human ordinance for checking and curbing the first tendencies to evil, is domestic paternal government. That's mean a house run by a father. When the family shall no longer have a head, the father. And the great foundation for the subordination of children in the mother's example is gone. When the mother shall have found another sphere than her home for her energies, when she shall have exchanged the sweet charities of domestic love and sympathy for the fierce passions of the hustings, when families shall be disrupted at the caprice, I can't, whatever, of either part. Oh, like now. And the children scattered as foundlings from their hearthstone, like now. It requires no wisdom to see that a race of sons will be reared near akin to devils. Oh, like now, then to men. In the hands of such a bastard progeny, like now. Without discipline, without homes, without a God, the last remnants of social order will speedily perish and society will be overwhelmed in savage anarchy. Well, we're living it. You didn't listen. We got some advice, but I'm going to go to the church first. You idiots. You fools. I mean, you should be my brothers, but you're acting like fools, right? I don't want to call my brother a fool, but you're acting like a fool. You are simping and white knighting for these rebellious, insubordinate women, and you say, oh, he's not manning up enough. Oh, well, we're going to believe her story that he was quote unquote abusive. You're going to believe
So,
all this crap. You're going to interfere. You're going to cut his balls off. You're going to let him be disrespected, have no sexual intimacy. You're going to neuter this head of a household and let the woman run roughshod rebellion against them and take their kids away and then justify yourselves for being, oh, we stood up for that woman. We're good people. No, you're a bunch of idiots. You're ruining
okay, I want
stability.
to
You're ruining the
I want to
foundation of society. And you're
I want to
buying
point out
lies.
something here.
And you're ineffective
I
cowards.
I did a stream, The Mask She Wears. And the theme of that was, okay, she has her adventurous stage in her 20s. She has her fun. Then she comes close to 30. In the red pill, it's called The Wall. Then she hits the purity stage for about 10 years. Wife's up a guy that
Well, the
she
wall's
wouldn't give the
35.
time of day to before.
No, the wall's 35. The epiphany phase is like 28.
Yeah,
And then there's
Okay.
the security
Yeah,
phase.
that's you're looking for the epiphany phase, Steve.
Okay,
Yeah.
the epiphany. Pops out a couple kids, gets wifed up, married, and then 10 years. It's about a 10-year time frame. Okay, 30 to 40, 28 to 38. It could be a little bit less, could be 7 years. Then she leaves. Oh, she misses her adventure. Okay, so what does Dabney say? When she shall have exchanged the sweet charities of domestic love and sympathy for the fierce passions of the hustings. Oh, he's talking about that. The phases going from the married life to, oh, I could do better. You know what? I remember that guy that I let do everything. And that's fun. Oh, I wasn't in my purity stage. On Chad. So Chad is the that her longing for Chad is the fierce passions of the hustings. And I don't even know what hustings mean. Got to look that one up.
Yeah, I'll look it up. I think it's an old word for uh the campaigning associated with an election. He's talking about in that movie. What was that movie? Let's go fly. Go that song. Let's go fly a kite. It had Dick Van Dyke in it. Come on, guys. What was that movie? It had Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins. Remember the banker's wife? She wouldn't take care of the kids, right? She left hearth and home to do her stupid stuff for women's rights.
Well, and you know what? There's also a meeting at which candidates in an election address potential voters. She's entertaining new candidates.
Yeah, I think that's the one that we're going for here. She's setting up her political campaign for why a new man should pick her.
Oh. And she decides to leave, everything just goes to crap. And you raise
But Nick's
bastard
point is
kids.
actually valid too. He's going to the sisterhood to fight for the sisterhood and some outside sphere do-goodery instead of attending to her home and her children. He's out rabble raising. He's become
of the
a
street.
social justice warrior,
Oh.
and she's also looking for a replacement. And it's her fierce passion. If I go out here and I do good, then I find a better man. It's adventure. Instead of tending the home fires, no, I'm out and about.
What does the church do? Oh, you go, girl. You don't have any. Steve's right. That's what they do, and we have this anarchy, savage anarchy, and bastards, and all these problems. But what do y'all think? What should the church do? Where have they been? What do you think? And what do you think about the implications for Christians in the church? Guys?
The only plausible, the only potential solution, which will be successful, is to affirm men and the rights of men over children. Will they do that? I don't think they're going to do it willingly or with any foresight.
Well, so they're committing abominations? They're monsters of nature?
Pretty much. Yeah.
So they're basically what what Christ should vomit out of his mouth as they destroy Christianity and civilization and sent for Satan.
Was that lukewarm water?
Yeah.
Neither hot nor cold?
Yeah.
Yeah, the modern church is kind of just voting present in today's society. The church, I came to this conclusion years ago that the church is not going to be the solution. I think the solution is going to come from outside, and I think that's because the church has so totally rotted away that even if I were to strip it down to the studs, so to speak, like you have to do with a moldy house, a rotten house, is there still enough there? Well, there might be individual churches. Joel Webben was brought up in the chat. Like, there's one that the individual church may survive. But I think particularly, Nick, listening to your story over the past, I've known you over a year now, even listening to, you talk about having to deal with church leadership. I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of this fractalized Protestant church left over when we're done. You know what I mean? Like there'll probably be a few, but
It's going to take a heavy hand, I think, to
Yeah.
a heavy hand and a select few faithful guys. And this is a positive outcome. It could end up in complete disaster with another heavy hand that hates the church, right?
Yes, it could.
So I'm just saying, he could have a heavy hand that comes in and has a select few intelligent men that are faithful and not these yes men,
But
not
but I
these idiots.
well, the other thing I want to say is particularly to the church, this does not have to happen. There's no
No.
there's no requirement that the church, that the what does my friend say, the visible church be saved.
Nope.
The church will go on. The Bible's actually very clear about that. But
That's true.
that does not mean that your particular iteration and version of church has to go on. That's just a construct of men, and in this case, a pretty rotten one.
And judgment begins at the house of God.
Well, let me say this. I'm Catholic. Plutarch and Nick are Protestant. Presbyterian. Is the truth in the Catholic Church? Yeah. Is the truth in the Presbyterian Church? Yeah. Do most of the Catholic churches, parishes, or Presbyterian parishes preach the truth? No. So, should you be looking for truth on the Catholic side or the Protestant side? I don't know that it matters. You got to look for, you know what? There are some Catholics and some Protestants of any type who will come together to this understanding some of these absolute natural law. And you know what? Some of them, a lot of them coincide with red pill truth. And that is what will the future be. And, these quibbles between Catholics and Protestants will fade in comparison to what is actually needed for
Yeah, no
Christianity
more brother
to endure.
wars. No more brother wars. No enemies to the right. No more brother wars. That's what's crippling us from doing anything. That's part of the reason. Because we
Yes.
fight over the stupidest things that can't unite on when we actually need to politically unite to do anything.
No more theology bros. That's what we called them in my church. No more theology bros. Guys, in the church, the theology bros. I'm glad your theology has been refined to a highly polished mirror. Okay,
No problem with that. But we
no
don't
problem with
live
that.
in what ought to be, live with what is.
Right.
And there's only so
Now,
much you can do.
well, now with your finely polished theology, get to work.
Yeah.
Well, you can see an example of that by what we're doing here. We come from different faith backgrounds, but we have the same view and message. Yeah, I bring in some Catholic things. And, this is how we look at it. Nick brings, this whole stream was talking about Protestant, primarily Presbyterian and Calvinist people, and I have no problem with that. We don't.
A lot of this
Okay,
from
we do
Aristotle
some
and Aquinas
good-natured
anyways,
ribbing back and forth, and yeah, we'll debate this and that, but it's not serious because we have the same mind towards these the foundational things. And I encourage other men to take the same attitude. Find what's important. And you know what? This stuff we're talking about today is the stuff that is threatening society and Christianity. So, all your other differences pale in comparison to this, because this is the thing that is going to bite you in the ass and potentially destroy you.
This is for all the marbles. This is for everything, guys. There's no well, we can just we'll talk about that when we get there. There's no we'll just do this quick fix solution. Nope. This is for everything. You have two choices in front of you right now. You can rebuild society, you can regenerate the church, or you can condone the chaos and you can let the chaos come, and you can let the destruction of civilization come. That will include the total destruction of the church. And I am, of course, speaking of the visible church here. Those are your choices. That's it. We are at that moment in history. And we're going to talk about, and I'm going to talk a lot about moments of history over the next few weeks. So,
oh, rest assured, gates of hell shall not prevail. Because on the path we're on, everything is going to be destroyed. And however small the church is at that moment, it will exist.
Yep.
And it will grow from there. Because there is no long-term future when families are destroyed, children are raised in single-family mothers, and the birth rate keeps declining. There is no good path forward. It will go to destruction, and whatever's left of the church will be there, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. Doesn't mean the church is all powerful today and it's going to correct everything.
No.
But this is fundamental natural law. You cannot survive if you don't get this right. Your society will be destroyed. And I'm going to save my last quote to the end because I hope it doesn't come true. So, guys, any closing advice or statements?
Nope.
Because we're right at the 3-hour mark.
Oh, I do.
What?
Well, you know what? I had to be short on Monday. You only got an hour of us on Monday. Nick came through and made up for that because he gave us 3 hours today. So you still got your average of 2 hours. But I've enjoyed this because Nick has given me opportunity to have a few good rants in here too.
Same here. I've ranted at least 2 times I can think of.
What's the benefit of having 3 minds, not just one?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you know what? We really appreciate our audience. We got some regulars here that we're glad you join us. And you know what? We are slowly gaining subscribers. Maybe it depends on your perspective. You know, we're about 60, 63 now. You know, we're gaining like 3 a week on a percentage basis. That's not bad. We don't ever think we're going to be up with the big boys, but we have fun with it.
Well, and I just want to say this, Shu, if you're still listening, you left a comment on our last video on our stream from Monday. You did a really good job of figuring out where we're going. And it's part of the reason we love bringing you up is because you're smart and you figured it out. I'm for the rest of the audience, I'm going to let you go figure out what he figured out. But Shu has, in fact, figured out where we're going, who we're pointing our guns at, why we're doing this. And you're going to see a lot of that come out over the next few weeks. But yeah, I mean, we're having fun doing this. And we also have fun interacting with you guys in the comments and in the chat. Because you guys have self-selected to be here, which means that you probably are already in the unusually intelligent category.
Well, there's a benefit here to the size we're at right now, because we can do a lot of direct interactions and bring up comments, because we don't have that flow of 50 comments going by every 30 seconds. It's kind of I'll pick this word. It's kind of an intimate environment. I don't mean that sexually. And that makes it fun for us because we get to interact with people, and potentially fun for the people who are on here. So if other people join and are not commenting, yeah, we would love to see your comments and increase that interaction, because at the size we're at right now, it's easy to do.
Absolutely. So Nick, do you want us to do the wrap up, then do your quote, or do you want to do the quote now and then do the wrap?
Do the quote now. So, guys, remember natural law. It's important. And the church has largely forgotten natural law in their biblicism, and that's why they have problems with all the women and all a bunch of crap. And the state has rejected natural law as well. Natural law respects father custody. It's about the patriarchy. Without that, you have disorder and chaos, and you have all the problems we have pretty much now. It's not like the only problem, but it's a major problem. All right, this is a quote from Dabney. I hope this does not become true. This is his last little subsection on women's rights, women, which he wrote in the 19th century. Thus will be consummated that destiny to which so many gloomy prognostics point, as the allotment of the North American continent, to be the accursed field for the final illustration of the harvest of perdition, grown from the seedling of the dragon's teeth of infidel radicalism. God gave the people of this land great and magnificent blessings and opportunities and responsibilities. They might and should have made it the glory of all lands, but they have betrayed their trust. They have abused every gift. Above all, they have insulted him by flaunting in his face an impudent, atheistic, God defying theory of pretended human rights and human perfectibility, which attempts to deny man's subordination, his dependence, his fall, and native depravity, his need of divine grace. It invites mankind to adopt material civilization and sensual advantage as their divinity. It assumes to be able to perfect man's condition by its political, literary, and mechanical skill, despising that gospel of Christ which is man's only adequate remedy. It crowns its impiety by laying its defiling hands upon the very forms of that Christianity, while with the mock affection of a Judas, it attempts to make it captive to the sordid ends of mammon and sense. Must not God be avenged on such a nation as this? His vengeance will be to give them the fruit of their own hands and let them be filled with their own devices. He will set apart. He will set apart this fair land by a sort of dread consecration to the purpose of giving a lesson concerning this godless philosophy, so impressive as to instruct and warn all future generations, as the dull and pestilential waves of the Dead Sea have been to every subsequent age, the memento of the sin of Sodom. So the dreary tides of anarchy and barbarism, which will overwhelm the boastful devices of infidel democracy, will be the caution of all future legislators. And thus, women's rights will assist America to fulfill her great mission, that of being the scarecrow of the nations. All right, now we can wrap up.
The scarecrow of the nations. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't like what it
You know
means,
what?
but I like that visual.
Yeah.
Dabney is talking like a Southerner who is against the Union. He must have been a Confederate.
Yeah, he was I think chief of staff to General Stonewall Jackson. Yeah.
That's correct. And considered America's greatest theologian at the time,
That's right.
both
That's
in
right.
the North and the South.
That's correct.
All right. So next Monday. Next Monday that's going to be a hard one for us. We don't expect many watchers because yes, we know it is the day before the election. So I'm going to be leading a sort of a historical look at how we got to this point in history. I will see if I can get a guest on to help with that because he's been studying it longer than I have. If not, I'll just go with what I've got. Then on Wednesday, I don't know that we really have a leader, although it was Steve's idea, so we'll call it Steve is leading on Wednesday. But Steve, what was your idea?
Well, there's going to be all kinds of commentary on the election, wailing and gnashing of teeth. So I want to go. That will be the derivative. The commentary is a derivative of what happened. I want to go to the second derivative. I want to comment on the commentary. And I don't really have a concept of what it's going to be yet. But the commentary and the back and forth and who's saying this and that and so forth, I think there's something there, but I don't know what it is yet.
Okay. Well, we probably won't know till Wednesday afternoon because
Probably not.
The results won't come in till Tuesday evening. So, but
so we're not going to, I don't want to comment on the election because everybody else is going to be commenting on the election.
Yeah.
I want to comment on the commentary on the election.
I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a bit of a different stream for us. It's not really a CCS, which is fine, but and it'll probably be a little more roundtable-ish, a little, like tonight was very much we had a plan for where we were going. I don't know that we'll have that. No, it's cool, Nick. I love having a plan. But next week is probably going to be next Wednesday is probably going to be a little more free form. You'll probably hear us typing away on our keyboards as we dig up, this Twitter reaction or whatnot. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to next week too. This stream was. I'm not going to say this was fun because this one there was a lot of heavy, hard stuff to wrestle with in this one. So to me, this stream was necessary and it was good, but I'm not going to call it fun.
But you know what? Next Wednesday, if any of our viewers want to come on and give their 2 cents worth,
yeah,
hey, let's make it a free for all if anybody's interested. Okay, what does this mean? Where are we going? What are people saying? What is the fears? I mean, what do you think about what it means for the future? You know what? We'll just make it a free for all.
Yeah, I like that. Let's do that. Well, there you go, guys. That's our stream next. That's our schedule for next week. This stream, we're gonna starting with this stream, accepting next week's election nonsense. We're gonna get into some pretty heavy stuff. This one should be shared with the church primarily.
Please share it.
Yeah, please do. We talked about Baskerville's books, and as far as I know, he's not a Christian, but we keep saying that the answers probably aren't going to come from the church, and so we're hoping that you can take this and take what we've said and what the various people that we've quoted from Aristotle to Baskerville and everyone in between, and bring that to the church and say, you know what, guys, we're missing something here. We've got work to do.
Okay, let me correct you a little bit there. Baskerville was not a Christian. He may have said he was raised atheist or had atheistic views. But I do remember him saying that he's becoming Christian, probably likely to become Catholic.
Oh,
but he's not yet.
Okay.
So, okay, he's Christian leaning. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
If we're wrong, we're wrong. But
yeah,
if it's something we don't know, we apologize. But yeah.
And he might even flag us for it, but that's up to him.
Well, we're not judging him either way, but I
Nope.
think I will say this: his perspective is not anti-Christian. It's totally consistent, and he has a lot of good insight into what's going on.
Yeah, I do recommend getting his book. I use this one pretty heavily. Taken into Custody really tells you what's going on with fathers and the machinations. And his latest book, which I quoted some, Who Lost America. So I do recommend, especially you church guys, to read it so you really understand the picture that men are facing, that you might face, even though you think, oh, it won't happen to me. So,
Well, and also to understand how really I would say to the church, look at how
we
your
end the
own
stream?
actions. No, we didn't.
Never mind.
I
Right.
would say really
Sorry.
look at how your own actions in the church are supporting the system. How you are encouraging the stuff that he's talking about. That would be the most beneficial thing you could do. So, well, this has been a long one. I imagine everyone needs to move on to other things, including our viewers. So we will see you next Monday. There is a plan. It's going to be a nice, boring, dusty history stream, because we didn't really want to have to deal with the election itself. And then Wednesday we've got Steve's Free for All, which I think will be a lot of fun. And yeah, if you guys have any questions about what we talked today, please drop us a comment. If you liked what you heard, please give us a like. And if you want to hear more, you can drop us a subscribe. We're not going to require it. We're not going to say you have to. It's if you thought that what you heard tonight was worth something and you want to hear more, that's what we're trying to earn your subscription, not, beg for it. So, well, we'll see everyone on Monday.
Later, guys.